you always want to know where you're going. I mean, I
Right.
think that's what it is. Like as soon as you feel like you're treading water, that creative spark just dries up.
Yeah, you
as long
sap
as
it up.
I just feel like I'm repeating myself, or if I feel like I have to repeat myself, or I feel like I am repeating myself, even if I get to where I'm going by making music that sounds kind of similar, and it just ends up sounding that way, that's better than trying to set out to, I'm just gonna make this kind of music because that's what I do good and I'm good with that. Like I'm not that guy. But
no,
some people are
not.
like that. Some people just want to crank out and they want to, and that's better maybe for like beat makers or people that have like a signature sound or whatever. I just don't know if that's good. That's not really good for, in my opinion, for like an artist career.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
Well, we're here and we did it.
We're here physically.
Yeah.
In the flesh, which is something I'm so virtual these days with everything.
When do you suffer from that thing where you want to be called by your artist name, or do you like, how do I introduce you?
You could just call me Tom. I sign my emails Tom Nukage now, so you can call me that.
Tom Nukage Myruski.
Yeah, it's actually, for the record, it's Myruski.
Myruski.
So,
see, I've been saying it wrong the whole time.
Oh, I didn't know you were saying
it. Since like day one, I just saw it and I like phonetically. I was like, Tom Myruski. That's got to be it. Rusky sounds way better. It's like a very friendly breed of dog or something like that. Oh, Rusky.
Told me to say it. That's how I believe that they were correct.
I mean, my mom is a Bon Jovi fan. That's the only reason I got John, Jon with no H, because my dad has the exact same name as me. His name is literally
We're gonna do
John
name stuff. First half timestamp name stuff.
Name stuff. Yeah. He's making notes right now.
Yeah,
no.
Totally.
Okay, so we'll get started. Dude. Thank you so much for coming. We've been trying to do this for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, once you told me about the idea for the podcast, I was like, awesome, and I was like, he's not gonna ask me to go on there, is he?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All my creative friends, certainly. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to be more expansive.
For friends.
Yeah. I wanted to have like a range of people, but it seems like I'm mostly connected in the circles of artists and like creatives, which I don't mind because there's still a lot of parallels between all of those different spaces, whether you're a painter or a tattoo artist or a graphic designer, you're a video editor, a producer, director, like all these things share a lot of the same sort of like vices and virtues of what it means to be a creative. And so I enjoyed that. And then I've started to get into, I had the vice president of marketing for KCF Technologies came on last week, and I had a really good conversation with him because he's like the person who adopts the creative. And he came from Honda, he was with Honda for a really long time. So like he has a very rich depth of knowledge of like how to apply using creative in clever ways, and also adopting it in the way that the social climate of social media has sort of changed the way that we use art and creativity now. And then like specifically you and I, we really delved down into the, I started a Midjourney account after I left your place. I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try this for a couple months. And, we have a couple remixes coming out, and we're in the process of finishing up like the album artwork and getting them ready for distro and everything like that. So it's nice to know that like in the advancing progressive creative space, I've got friends like you that are like really your organization and infrastructure for the way that you like create music is really, really like your actual like in DAW experience. Very different than what I'm used to, but I don't work with a lot of producers that are doing like EDM or beat production or production only. And you do that pretty heavily, but you also expand it even further into like very meticulous organization of like file structure of how you like organize. You're like, these songs are ready. These songs are queued up to be released. These are done. I got to get more of these over to this category. And I forget what the software is that you use for that, but I'm like, I feel like it could benefit me if I could wrap my brain around it. And some people have the ADD that works that way, and mine certainly does not.
Well, I think I'd kind of do it to help with my ADD because I also have ADHD. I was actually diagnosed now about a year ago, and I was like, okay. So
So I got through the first 30 years of my life without noticing.
So and not to get into that, but like in terms of the organization, I think the hardest part sometimes of being the producer and also being the everything, the songwriter, because like we'll talk about production obviously, but I'm also trying with my collab with you and also other collabs. I've been like going way more into songwriting itself, and writing songs, man, like, you know, a set of tracks.
Well, I came over the one time, like a couple months ago, and I was just going to do some like top lines for like an idea you had. And then we just started like the structure wise started to kind of blend out into like a song, like a verse chorus kind of a structure. Not quite, but like it's some sort of a weird hybrid.
Right.
And then EDC Festival was, I think, either yesterday or maybe it's going on right now, or it was going on definitely like yesterday or the day before. At the time of recording this podcast.
Right.
And I sent you a thing on TikTok yesterday. You're like another person who shares the love language of like sending videos to people that are relevant to things that we
I'm
talk
not
about.
caught up on the TikTok, so just so you know, I've been.
So the one I did yesterday was Marshmello was doing a set, and he had somebody, I think it was like the Screamer from Crown the Empire, like another band that kind of blends like that realm of like EDM and metalcore together. And he kind of did like a guest part of his set, and they did like a pit. And so like EDC, not very typical to have pits like that in there. And so it was really interesting to see it. So I sent it to you because it's like a pretty long clip, but you get to watch sort of this like build up of the pit and how they do the drop. And to me, I look at it like some of my favorite bands, even just from like the beginning of me getting into music and maybe even considering like singing, were like Linkin Park and bands of that ilk that were kind of already in the process of doing that. And then they had like a bunch of side projects.
Yeah. This is exactly where my head is at right now, like completely, because the new, obviously we've been talking about for a couple months, Bring Me the Horizon, you know.
And they just dropped a new song that's really good.
The new song they just dropped is like, I was wondering if maybe we would talk about this because it is like the epitome of like the best of metal, the best of like pop, hyper pop specifically, but pop nonetheless, and electronic, which is obviously hyper pop is like pop and electronic, like on steroids. But then there's what Ollie brings to it, which is his own thing, and it's just like, wow, this is really good, and you wouldn't, if somebody described it to you, like it's one of those things where the sum of the parts is greater, like the gestalt, it's greater than the sum is greater than the whatever. The whole is greater than the sum. That's it. That's the saying.
Yeah, if you look at all the parts individually, it feels like it could be an eclectic song. Right. But then you listen to it together, you're like, wow, they kind of seamlessly threaded this needle together.
Like, you'd think that it would take an album of doing music like that to nail it for most artists.
And they're like,
to do it.
They're just dropping the single. Yeah, which will likely lead up to whatever their album is. And then I saw another TikTok like maybe this morning where somebody said that in the music video, when they're wrapping the end of that video, you kind of get a tease for what the next song is going to be.
Right.
And I haven't really gotten a chance to watch the whole music video.
So what is the name of the song so people can look it up?
I don't have my phone. My phone's on airplane mode. I don't know what the name of it is. Carlos,
it's Lost, I think. I think it's Lost.
Lost, is that the name of it?
Yeah.
But one of the things that I feel like that really kind of shifted for them when they picked up Jordan, who joined their band. Like he joined around the Sempiternal album. And I got to go into the studio with David Bendeth whenever he was finishing up the mixes and masters for that album. So I was listening to these tracks before they inevitably leaked. I think somebody at Epitaph, at the US Epitaph label, it somehow escaped their offices and leaked, and then they ended up dropping the album earlier than they were planning on it. But I got to hear it like
which album are we talking about?
Sempiternal.
Oh, okay. So that was a while ago now.
Yeah. But that was when they first kind of got him into the mix, and he started really bringing in these more like culturally pop and EDM oriented elements. And then the next several records after that, it was like they kind of let him bleed into the songwriting a little bit more. And then the album that they put out during the pandemic that had Ludens and a handful of those were like, they just sounded like straight EDM bangers, man. And what's great about that is it contextual, like if you go to Europe and you go to clubs, there's a lot of times where like you'll go and you'll play a show and it'll be a matinee show and you'll be done by like 6 or 7 or whatever, and you got your hard out is like 8 o'clock because that's when EDM night starts, or the club or the house techno night starts.
In New York, you know.
Yeah. Well, basically any major metropolitan area that's like pretty popular. But in Europe, I noticed that the blending and the appreciation for like deep appreciation for like metal and rock, and then simultaneously like unabashedly being like completely accepting of being like, yeah, I'm here at this club. There's like multiple like split layer clubs where it's like, here's rock, and then over here you can go and see EDM. And then at some point, it, like after midnight, it's all rock or it's all EDM and all that kind of stuff. And they're just one of those bands that I feel like are blending it in a really, like they're shifting the way modern rock
Well, they
feels.
are, European, which kind of helps.
Yeah,
but you kind of
definitely.
forget because they don't see, you would not know unless you know, like many bands, like, that they don't have accents or anything when they sing.
Ollie does.
Well, he does, but
like,
you can't really, unless you know to listen for it, you wouldn't notice, I don't think.
it's more like in his speaking parts. I feel like you'll hear him. It kind of bleeds through in the way he like speaks something. But for the most part, if he's singing, they say that you really can't hear accents as well during the artist singing.
Right. So like Pendulum is a huge group. Shout out to, KJ Saka. Pendulum is a guy I worked with a while ago. And they're a huge, Knife Party, that the duo, like it's the two guys from that. They have a rock band that they do. That's like, it's a drum and bass band essentially.
Nice.
And they're huge everywhere, but probably America, because they're kind of like from a different era of, it was before the term EDM. So it was like electronic music before it kind of blew up, and they're basically drum and bass group. So it was like 4 people. If you were into drum and bass anywhere in the world, because it's not a huge scene, you knew who Pendulum was. Like if you were into drum and bass, like pre 2010 or something.
Right.
And then kind of like they kind of went on hiatus because Knife Party started, and then Knife Party, I think they're still going hard. So
I've definitely seen them in collabs with other artists too. Like I think that they kind of like Knife Party is like an ensemble that they can kind of like people want to pair with to kind of get some of that essence out of them into their music. And so they definitely, I've seen their name pop up in a couple different tracks on like my Discovery release radar or whatever. And
they kind of like, I mean, it's interesting. Like I could talk all day about kind of like the EDM, because I came from kind of the rock world, I guess, punk and metal and everything. And then I was producing and I was just screwing around. Like I guess this is kind of like my quick origin story, is like just screwing around in FL Studio because my friend showed it to me and I was like, you could actually make music with this. This is like easy. And I was just like, oh, this is crazy. So I was screwing around with it like way in like 2002, which was like when I was in high school. So that's how old I am. So that, but then I got Reason, and I don't know, through like, I guess I was making stuff and I was showing it to people, as you do when you don't know anything. You're just like,
is this good?
I don't know. And then people are like, yeah. And looking back, I mean, I don't understand how anybody thought anything I was doing at the time was any good, but it was just like people were encouraging me. And I actually did have like, in those early days, I had some label support and I had like some shows I got through labels. All like when I was 19, I was playing shows at clubs where I wasn't even old enough to get into the club. And I was like, okay. But it all kind of was, there was, how the music industry is. Like I was young, I didn't know anything. I just assumed everybody was telling me the truth about everything that was happening. When people would say,
why would they lie?
Yeah. And like there was a guy who said like, we want to sign you and we want to put you on a tour in Europe because like there's a niche, like you're doing a certain niche that's going to be really big there. And so I was like, sweet. I was like, I'm going to pack my bags. And then turns out this guy is just a total charlatan. Like find out years later that he like lied to some people I know about having cancer and like all this weird shit.
Dude,
so,
the music industry is rife with like a wide gambit of charlatans that are just out there trying to capitalize where they can.
So that was like a big blow to me. I was like, oh, like I thought I had this like real thing going on, and turns out it was just like nothing. And then there was a couple other, there was a bunch of, I could just talk all day about all of like the crazy promises that I've been told and then not fulfilled on. So that's why I don't really fuck with labels anymore. I mean, I will,
I'm jaded.
If there's like a big label that I've heard of, like if it's a label, you're coming to me and I've never heard of you before, chances of me unless I just look and see that there's names on your roster that I know, it's like, I'm not going to work with anybody, because why? You can do it all yourself now, I released stuff on a label. I'm like, what's your marketing budget? It's like $200. I'm like, I could just do that myself.
$200. Yeah.
And then you don't have to keep any of the royalties.
Yeah. So I think that gets lost on people. Like the ad world is kind of like rife right now with people that are doing like Spotify conversion ads, wherever you're doing them, however you're doing them. It's like that is like the modus operandum for being able to get your music out there and be heard. And I feel like a lot of people look at that like that barrier and entry means you're not able to capitalize or grow as an artist organically anymore. And that has to be partially true just because there's such an inundation of music being released. Yeah. And so one of the things that I feel like people miss on the, like, oh, why would you spend $1,000 to do, you know, an ad if you're only going to see like, you know, if you look at the analytics for your ad, you're like, okay, it generated this many streams for this $1,000 I spend. You can kind of, you know, quantify that into, okay, well, maybe I made like $100 off of the 1,000 I spent. Right. That's not really worth it. Or maybe it's like 150 or whatever. But when you look at the long-term impact of doing that ad or for $1,000, really, it's not just what happens during the period where the ad's running. It's the people that you collected in that period that keep coming back and listening. Right. Extends the reach of that significantly further. And in a long game, it's like, yeah, it is like sort of like a money pit investment that you have to make. But I think if you do it, you kind of accept that, hey, if I do this, it will slowly build to the point where if I stop and your numbers are high enough, it kind of dwindles so slowly that you really can see that the value kind of does come back as long as you've done it long enough.
Right. I think about this all the time because I was running conversion ads a while ago when I started, and I had some early success with it. And then I ran subsequent songs doing the same strategy, didn't hit. And it was just because I think it was the song, like you never know, songs are going to hit. Some songs are not. What I should have done and what I might end up doing eventually is going back to that original song that did hit. And then I was still running ads to that, but I lapsed. I eventually stopped, and now whatever. So it's not being kind of promoted anymore. But yeah, like if you have something that's working, just $2 a day, just leave it. Just don't stop it. Just let it go.
Keep hammering at it.
Keep going, even if it's not your newest song. If it's working, if it's converting for like less than 20 cents, whatever, for a new listener. Yeah. And don't, do any of the there's certain countries that'll just eat your budget. They just want to stay away from. Yeah. So stay away. If you're like advertising in like, America and Australia and English speaking countries and stuff, and you're getting those under 20-cent conversions, just let it go. Let's let it ride. $2 a day. Don't ever stop it. Just whatever you can afford, because
it's really not that much.
Because Spotify, they see you and they see what you're doing, and they will reward you, and they've rewarded me. Like I've gotten trending on Discover Weekly, which when they put you on that playlist for me, it's like thousands and thousands of plays in a day.
Yeah, and then you're seeing like 1,000% increases of streams.
And all you need is one day for all of a sudden now you're at, I'm at close to 10,000 monthly listeners because of a couple days. Yep. And then bookers and people and labels will see that and they say, okay, this guy is like doing something.
Right. I think people think that like Discover Weekly, that's the kind of thing, or Release Radar or whatever it is. Like when you want to hit those things, everybody's like, oh, that has to be from a new release. But really, it doesn't have to be from a new release. No. Really, it comes down to what song is algorithmically like performing well. And so one of the things that I've noticed, did you do the Marquee campaign when they had that in beta where like it was like $300 is the minimum budget? No. Don't. It's a sham. Basically, the turnaround for the investment on it was just not worth it. However, I will say I'm excited to try out this discovery mode. Yeah. And so I went through and Spotify basically
like it's always like I remember right at the beginning of a month.
You missed your window. Yeah. So I just remembered like 2 or 3 days ago. So I set us up for a June campaign, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. And really, what does it harm you? Like they're not taking anything of all of your. They're already taking like a percentage of your streams. They're not taking more for the ones that they push out. They're just taking. They're only taking more from the ones that they push out that actually get clicked on.
Right.
And so for me, that's
according to them.
So I'm really looking forward to it because I've had a lot of friends that have told me they did their April and May campaigns and they went really well. So I set us up, and when I went through and it was like, these are the songs that we think would be great to use for your June campaign. It gave me 6 songs that it's going to push. And I was like, that's amazing. Like I've never pushed 6 songs at once at any point in time in our career. So like, it's nice to see that's the volume that I'm able to work with.
What's the move with that? Because like right now with what I was thinking was running the song that I have that's kind of like from what I've been like seeing online, like it has to be a song that it hits with people, like whatever that means. Unfortunately, it is what it is. Like certain songs just do better than others, even though as artists,
you're never going to be able to tell. Yeah.
We can all sort of say, oh, and I really like, I want this song to be good. I don't see like there's many songs I have that like I've pushed and like I don't freaking know why they didn't work, because to me they sound good as or better than other songs.
Right.
But there's just something that
you're a singular
you can't
viewpoint.
Think about that. You can't really worry about that.
You'll beat yourself up
when
quick.
you put your marketing hat on. You have to leave your artist hat aside.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what we do in like my little organization system is like there's different hats that get worn in different parts of the process, and I'll get back to that. We'll go back to that system later, but so now I'm talking about marketing. Back to the marketing hat.
Yeah, we put that hat on.
But like, so the song, so discovery mode, right? The songs, they won't push the songs if the people aren't saving them, basically at the end of the day. So if you already running songs and you're seeing that those songs you have promoted them and their ratio of listens to favorites is lower, don't push those. Just push the ones that the ratios, anyway, I haven't done it myself, but this is my sense of it is that you want those songs that are just like your undeniable songs. They're going to be all the songs that are already doing really well on your profile. And I don't know. It's like the only thing is like when you're running ads, I don't want to necessarily muddy the waters with a bunch of data that's coming in because it's all about data. Like you have to know what the fuck your data says,
right? In
order for you to make informed decisions about your next track and your next track. And again, this is all the marketing hat, but then it kind of bleeds into the artist hat because you
carry that information over.
You want to throw that information over the wall so that kind of like what obviously like just repeating your hits is not a good idea ever, but
right.
But at some level, it's like, oh, this song did really well. And none of the songs that I released since then sound anything like that or have some particular thing about that. Like maybe it's good to circle back and like do something that sounds like that. Like, obviously that's the least you can do, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard. You got to like kind of go where the muse takes you sometimes too. And sometimes it takes you nowhere near where you wanted to go when you start out. Like.
Yeah, totally. And like, for instance, I was going to do like a hard wave record, which is like this kind of like spacey, trappy, kind of like 80s synthwave influenced trap that's kind of like big. And then I ended up doing this new record I'm working on, or where you're going to be on it, is like totally not like that. It's like, it's more heavier. It's more, of course it is, because it's me, but it's like more spacey. It's more like epic, of course. And because those are all kind of that's all my baggage I'm already bringing in from what I was already writing before. And that's just kind of like where I go. So, I couldn't write a hard wave record unless I was going to try to be really disciplined about it. But why am I going to try to be really disciplined about it when I can nobody's asking me to make a hard wave record.
Right. I'm under no deadline.
I just didn't know what to write because I'm getting like, I've done so much like the melodic dubstep stuff for a couple of years now. And I kind of like have this certain sound that I can do, and I can just do that sound. And I like the sound. Other people like the sound. It's not like blowing up the way I hoped it would, but it's like it's working. We're gonna release the Bad Habits is kind of that sound. The Bad Habits remix with you guys. And so,
which to me that was like, okay. So just to segue into that, like we started, like, if you're in the certain genres of music, kind of get away with doing like a bunch of, like, if you're a rock band, usually 9 times out of 10, the only alternative version of a track you release is the acoustic version of it. And so that's great. I think it's like a good necessary supplement that you can do. But for me, I wanted to expand that. Like, I was like, I want to do like remixes. Like, I like your genre of music, and you listen to a subset of, say you take your top like 100 artists and then combine all of their monthly listeners, right? So if any of those artists are the artists that influence you or, influence your production process, the odds are if the outcome sounds anything like any of those, we looked at like Illenium records and stuff like that. We were like, we kind of combed through things. We were like, oh, there's this part of this song that like, I like this, and I want to incorporate something like that into what I'm working on now. And so I'm just trying to figure out how to get to that build up or this, that, and the other thing. And in the process of doing that, you're creating these songs that when they find their audience, right, when they find their home, they're going to do well. They just got to they have to be, targeted into that audience. And so what I liked about doing covers, and honestly, just about meeting you in the first place was like you were already doing things on your own that I was like, man, this sounds amazing. Like, I'm surprised you're not larger than you are, and that's the comment that I get more often than not about our band. That I love hate, right? Because it's it's validation, but it's also like a slap in the face.
It's the best and it's the worst.
It's a backhanded compliment. Yeah. So you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, and you kind of have to like it takes you have to. It's really tough when you're starting out and you're like work really hard on that product and you think this is the product. It's like, it's practically almost as good as like my favorite artist. Like that's, where I was about 10 years ago now, where I was already doing production at like a pretty high level and I was trying to get it to labels and I was sending it out and just nothing. And I was like, something's going on here. But like in reality, it's just like I didn't really know anybody that had any real power anywhere to kind of get things through the works. And
it's a cool kids club.
Network. It really is, because I spent years networking in New York. I was a part of multiple organizations that had, met, I've definitely met hundreds of people, and but like people that were coming to networking events aren't the people that are already networked in, unfortunately.
Right. They're people that are trying to network in.
So and then there would be like some people you would meet on the periphery that would be, seeming like they had some, they've got this or that. And then you kind of dig a little deeper and it's like, they're kind of sketchy. So
another charlatan,
like,
I see.
Why is it that all the people, like anytime you think that there's somebody that's kind of like got a connection or something that and then it turns out, I actually don't want to associate with this person after all. Why does this keep happening?
Well, like to me, I feel like when I met you and I started listening to your music and I brought up the idea of like maybe doing some remixes to some songs, I was like, I'd already just started kind of partnering with my buddy Alex Goot in Nashville, and he was doing a bunch of Nightcore releases of every song that we were releasing that was a cover of like a top 40 song. And in doing that, we were generating money off of we were already doing this song, we got it done, and we have a music video for it. It's out great. Now it's like, okay, but this Nightcore thing, that genre is huge, and I knew nothing about it. I had zero interest in it. It's not for me. It's for that generation of gamers and young kids and weebs that like love to listen to music fast and get through it and get to the next bouncer track so they can like game or whatever it is they're doing. I don't know. I don't. Anime music videos is another one. So like they kind of find their space, their home in that realm. But so I was like, okay, now we're already getting like this V1 remix.
Did you ever listen to like, you ever heard of happy hardcore? It was like a genre.
Yeah. Way
like
back in the day.
Is like happy hardcore is like the granddaddy of
for sure. Absolutely. That's a perfect lineage like progression.
Happy hardcore is just like sped up vocals with like do like super
just
fast,
slamming at you the whole time.
And I remember hearing like some like happy hardcore like Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, video game happy hardcore
back in like when I was in high school, and I was like, I remember actually it was like maybe it was like
Mega Man.
Might have been middle school, honestly, because I remember I had cassette tapes and I was like, I found this stuff on the internet. I put it on cassette tapes. It was before burned CDs. So
when we started doing those remixes with Alex for Nightcore, I was like, you know what? Like, it'd be really cool if you could do an EDM version remix of these songs, because I mean you hear them almost everywhere in like trailers and at festivals. People are remixing stuff all the time. That's not like that's old hat. That's stuff that's already been being done, but we weren't doing it at all. So I'm like, what is the market we're not tapping into of people that would like this, using all the core components of what we already had mixed with these other elements that we just do not put into our music because we're not EDM producers. Any of us in the band or in our production realm really do that. And so it was a unique opportunity to be like, hey, this is like another remix that like we've already done all the work for it. You can take this and play with it as you see fit. And if I already enjoy your sonic textures and soundscapes that you bring to the table, it was a no-brainer that it was going to be something good. And now we're finally going to get to start releasing them. So I'm really excited because like we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary of Legends Never Die being released in June. And this episode will be out in, I want to say, the end of June.
Okay.
And so it'll be a perfect time for it. Like, if it's not out yet, it should be out shortly after. Yeah. But the goal being like, get that remix out on that 1-year anniversary. And then we can get, the Bad Habits remix out there. Yeah. And for me, it's like, then we just do a split. And so I think that artists need to start thinking more about this realm of collaboration when it comes to that, because there are like Bo Burnham, for example, doing a song, That Funny Feeling. And it got, Phoebe Bridges, is that what it was? Phoebe? Yeah, I said it right. Carlos helped me out in the back. Carlos is my Jamie. And so, like then that song took off just from her doing it. And so it's like, you need to start looking at these examples as an artist and say, hey, I don't know everything. So I got to be willing to try some things, like dip your toes in the water and try some new shit. And for me, it was a no-brainer because I already love bands like Linkin Park and Bring Me the Horizon. I was big into like all of the rock, rap, and rock EDM band. BNB Nation was like a big band that I was into. It wasn't really rock. It was mostly just sort of like house music, but
right. Yeah, I listened to them a little bit.
I mean, that was like the soundtrack to my senior year of high school. I'm sure of it. And so like, but for me, like seeing the way that we could come together and collab and do something that we were already going to be doing anyway, and it gives us an opportunity for an extra release that has an extra opportunity to reach it. Like you're not doing EDM covers, so like. Not that you couldn't, you're just not. So like if we do the cover and then you can use us as this vessel to kind of do that too, and it taps into a new market.
And it kind of
it's
does
great
like,
for both of us.
Back in the day, like I love doing remixes because they were so, I want to say they were necessarily easier, but like there was something inspiring about the original song that you could like you could just get right into it. You can just get, because I used to do.
You're not searching for the muse for the creativity side of it in terms really of like got like building.
When the best songs that I did in my early years were all remixes. Like the most attention I ever got for anything I did was from remixes, and it's because it's just that like inspiration. And usually, if it was a contest, there was a hard deadline.
Right,
so
right,
you
right.
would like you'd be like,
I have to get this done.
I want to do this, and then like it'd be like a week before, and then I'd like be screwing around, and all of a sudden I'd be like, "Oh, this is fire!" And then I'd have to like, once you have that, you're like, I have to get this out,
chase
now.
that spark,
And then it ended up working out really well for me because ended up like that was my early I guess like if that early like label stuff was my first like success, like back in like when I was like 19, this was like my second like whiff of success around like 2012 or 2013 when I started getting like remixes on blogs. I had this one song on like the song Slaps, which was at the time music blogs were like the thing still, and that kind of blew up, and I ended up getting all these like followers from that. So that was cool. It was actually my remix of Zed's Clarity, which was was like, and I still like that remix is still like pretty sweet. But now obviously if I was gonna actually the production on it like was really good for at the time too. Like everything about it held up for years, and nowadays, I probably could do a better job. But like, it's one of those things where, sometimes when you're starting out, you can get that quality, you can get that level, but like sometimes it's just you're not consistent yet.
Well, the other thing is you don't have to go through the sample licensing side of things if we do the cover because that's covered under ours.
Right.
That mechanical
that's like
license
the biggest
is covered
advantage to doing this because I don't have to worry about copyright. Like that was one of the things is like when I was starting out, people were getting big by doing remixes, and then people would find the remixes, but then a lot of them were bootleg remixes.
Right.
So then, because back in the day when SoundCloud was like more of the Wild West than it is now, before Sound ID and all that, you could put out DJ mixes, remixes, mashups. Some artists got huge, like Capslop got huge on mashups. His mashups were epic at the time, and like then I think he's like got a career still, and good for him. And like just from mashups, and if they're good mashups, then good. Like I'll listen to them, but I would play it at a wedding too, because it's all like the pop songs that people know.
Right.
If I ever DJ'd a wedding or anything, which I never have, but.
So my hope is that like, if one of these EDM cover remixes that we do goes out and it hits in the right realm, that some even larger EDM artist is like, this slaps, and I'm going to find a way to integrate this into my set doing whatever I do live, with Marshmallow.
You would hope so. Like that's what I hope.
It's fine to have that lofty pie in the sky dream, as long as I'm not banking on it. Right. So like for me, I love when the good things happen. I'm not necessarily searching for them to happen because you can't plan them almost ever. But it is nice to be like, it'd be really cool if this happened. And sometimes that weird shit does happen. Like we played Indonesia because some Indonesian fans found our first cover we ever released. And we're such a big fan of it that they were able to sell us to their promoter. And their promoter was like, we'll fly them out and put them up in a condo for a week, and then they can headline this festival. And I was like, okay. Like, we've never been to Indonesia. Why would we headline the last night of the festival? And that's the kind of shit that happens. Like, you don't think that they
that's what I've heard about with Asia is you can like headline as, I don't know, you telling me that or somebody, or people have been talking about that. I've heard that multiple times from multiple different people.
I remember seeing video footage, doing a couple tours with this band, The Word Alive, and their drummer at the time was Luke Holland, and I saw it from his post first. They played Jakarta, and it was like 10,000 people outdoor festival, and they'd never played Indonesia before, and like people knowing every word and going absolutely nuts. And I was like, wow, I want to play there someday. And then lo and behold, like it was probably only like 2 or 3 years later, we got the invite to go out. And I mean, the experience was awesome. Like Nick and I, we left our condo and we decided to like not call our driver and have him come pick us up and take us anywhere.
Just because they like promote it really well and like
it's a byproduct of that, and they
There's
also
not anything else going on.
Indonesia's its own bag, right? Because the artists in Indonesia are like, they're almost every one of them is like virtuoso level. You meet any guitar player, bass player, they're probably top tier in the world. Like the I don't know, I don't think he's Indonesian. I'm trying to think he's the lead singer of Journey. When he got replaced by a guy who's Filipino, I think, and sounds just like him. And everybody we met out there, like we met a guy out there that was playing with our guitar player, Aaron, when he was still alive, that was like one of the best guitar players in Indonesia, like known to be, that's like his title is like best guitar player in Indonesia. And so when we're out there, we're palling around with like, Harry Coco Santoso is like the promoter that brought us over, and he's introducing us to like Sony Indonesia, and like who is like his right hand man and his homie, and they do a lot of festivals because they love music and they promote it just so genuinely. The culture is way more like into it, which was weird for me because they were like they're a predominantly Muslim country, and so I didn't expect that they would take too well to like rock or like, and sometimes we say there's like a fuck in a song here and there, so I was like, I don't know. Is that like taboo? Because we were in a dry county. Like we had to have our driver drive us like another prefecture over to be able to get alcohol so we could drink in our condo because there wasn't any in the area where like in Jakarta proper. And like Nick and I remember one day we left our condo and we decided to walk to the convention center, which was like a football field length or two away. And on the walk, we got stopped like 3 times by people. A dude literally ripped over to the side of the road on a scooter and hopped off and ran over to us like, "Oh my God, Relic Hearts, can I get a picture with you?" And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like super. It was
wild.
like, it's like culture shock is one thing. And this was like 1 degree further in being like, what is going on right now? And so in the spirit of that conversation of like, it's good to have, that those pie in the sky dreams.
But that's what my question is, like, until you had that gig scheduled, had anybody ever heard of you? Or was it just sort of the gig that drove the exposure that drove the fans?
We had, I guess, like a culture of people that were over there that had heard of us that liked it. It was like, I don't know how big the group was. I couldn't know that, but like it fell under the ears of the right person they ended up, the girl that pitched us to the promoter, Yuna, she was an MC for the event for in between all the artists and stuff like that. Yeah. And so, but I didn't know that then. So I thought she was
the cool thing about music that I don't know if there's anything like that. It's where it's like you could like have never heard of a band one day and then they're your favorite band the next day.
Yeah. And we still exist in that economy, right? Like it's not a matter of, it sucks that exposure is the name of the game. Like you have to get the exposure, but it's always been that. It's just the means of doing it was different. We had radio was the only means of getting heard before. So of course getting on radio
there was
was
something I wanted to say about that before when you're talking about Spotify numbers, because it's like it kind of goes back to that where it's like, yes, there's like the numbers. The difference now that it used to be is like, yes, it's easier to get numbers, but the numbers mean less. That's all in terms of monetary.
You need more numbers to make less. Basically,
you need more numbers to make less. So like, but if you don't care about the making of the money, just how cool is it that I have like, whatever, close to 9,000 monthly listeners to my music?
Yeah, dude. Like, okay, go back and tell
all these other places.
16-year-old Tom that you are able to check your analytics right now on your computer, and it can show you all the countries, the top 10 countries you're in. You're like, wait, I'm in more than just my local town.
It's really hard to like wrap your brain around that because like
we're not grateful for it nearly as much as we should be. I feel like,
but also like there's something else I realized. So like I consciously like during the pandemic was like, I'm going to focus on, because I'd been done doing local gigs for a while, and like local gigs in New York, like I wasn't opening for big artists or anything. Like that's where you would see like you would see to be able to grow, right? But it was just like I was just playing for other artists, and that's kind of what you do.
And their friends and maybe the promoter.
Yeah. And then like if you want, it's hard to play in your own city too. Like if I had wanted to like grow, I may have like,
because they're all your homies. You're like, okay, I want my friends and family are gonna come out and see me, and that's not my audience, right? Like that's not who I'm trying to pander to. I'm glad that these people support me, but really I want people that.
But there's also just like a bias where promoters that are like those bigger next tier promoters, they get hit up probably all the time for local artists, and they don't want to book anybody. They just have a bias against anybody that's in their own city. Whereas if it's a smaller artist from Philly or if they're from Boston, they're much more likely to book them because it's like, you know, you're bringing them in.
Yeah, they're trying to sell tickets. At the end of the day, they need tickets and numbers out the door.
Yeah,
so that
and
they
if
have
it's some artist that they can see for free anytime down at like the local bar,
right.
They're not gonna. So that's why it's like this catch-22 where it's like you move to New York, you think, oh, I'm gonna be able to play shows. It's like
you can,
unfortunately, it's you can play shows for fun and not get paid, but like it's very, very difficult to get networked in with the right people that are going to get you those shows. And there's just so much competition that. And the people, like, the competition is not just coming from your neighbors. Like it's a regional, like it's a huge region. Like the Chainsmokers are from New York. Like, what does that mean? I never saw them walking around in Brooklyn.
Right. Yeah, I never caught them in Brooklyn. I never caught them. What's the what is the one bar in Brooklyn that I'm thinking of? The Trash Bar. Do you remember the Trash Bar?
Oh yeah, I've been to the Trash Bar. I used to go there a lot.
That is an ultimate throwback.
Yeah.
I never saw them there. That's all I'm saying.
I never saw them there, but like, I mean, I would kind of get a little bit resentful because it was like,
I hope they hit me.
I was looking at,
we were at Trash Bar. And,
I was looking at all these artists coming up and then being like, they're from New York. Like, I've never heard of them. They don't play local shows. Like, what is this? It's because they're already somehow networked in and they are in somewhere in the region. Like they're either in New York or in Connecticut and they just say, we're from New York because it just sounds better than we're from like Weehawken, Connecticut, New Jersey or whatever. Yeah, Hartford, Connecticut. And so
we're from Rhode Island.
It's this weird perception. Like the perception of moving to a city to do music and the reality are way different. And like, but on the other hand, you can get like maybe if I was trying to do more professional gigs, like maybe if I was just focused on making money with music, maybe I would have ended up working with more professionals because then people are just in a different mindset,
right?
You know, but
I feel like it's hard to. My path. I think a lot of people get into music for the right reasons, and there are wrong reasons too. Certainly, I think that with music, it's hard to say I want to get into this to make money. It's nice if you do that, but I mean, if you look at most of the major artists that are like hitting the charts constantly, it's like their family. It's like nepotism, basically. Like their family are really well connected and have the money to fund this.
It does make it easier to like continue to fail because you have to just fail.
But that just shows you to me that to the credit of that statement, like that proves that if you could just get into a position where you had enough money to dump into the getting you exposure part of things, whatever that looks like for you. That could be a bunch of conversion ads. It could be a bunch of, we're getting ready to do a Sirius XM radio push. And so that's in the fall, and Spitfire is like the first candidate song to go out for that. So like, that's going to be pretty sick, is it not? So
so we officially announced that.
Yeah, right. As the band disbands and I get like a heart attack and I'm fucking 6 feet under by the time the episode drops. No, like, so but in doing that, if you can plan it strategically, you can do something where like you're hitting the radio waves, which is really where I think our core audience really exists. Because our fan base is a mixed bag. It's basically everybody from like 18 to 35, which is a huge audience, which is great. And we just need to cater to where those people listen to music. And a lot of times it is like,
in the car.
In the car, Sirius XM radio, or at the gym. And so it's like getting on gym playlists, getting on motocross.
I love
listening
to hard rock when I'm working out. It's the best.
Yeah, man.
Or dubstep.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater soundtrack didn't blow up for no reason. Like it fit the vibe of what you wanted to listen to while you're skating.
Those songs are all just
that
like
Goldfinger song. That Goldfinger song in the beginning of that is the reason why I wanted to at one point I wanted to sign to Epitaph Records. I think they were on Epitaph. I'm not sure if they were, but I was pretty sure they were. But one of the reasons for sure that I wanted to work with John Feldman. I'm like, every record he produced that I was in high school listening to or in my undergrad years listening to.
That's the singer of Goldfinger?
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, super, super talented. I think he's got a wider arrangement understanding of how to work with each of the artists individually. And he kind of does channel his sound into things, but like his stuff he did with Blink-182 was great. The stuff he did with Story of the Year when I was growing up was amazing. And I got a good opportunity to talk to Dan Marsala, the singer from Story of the Year, about that over many nights at Flamingo Bowling on Thursdays in St. Louis when I lived there. And he used to be like, yeah, we wrote that first record and Feldman's hands were all over that record. So we were feeling cock of the walk. Like we feel like we knew what we were doing. So then they did their next record and they only did like 2 songs with them. And those 2 songs were like the 2 bigger songs on that second record. And otherwise the record kind of flopped. And so then it took like their third record after that to be the one where they kind of just started to come back again because they did some more songs with him. But I mean, he did The Used, he did like Black Veil Brides, he did all these bands that I was like super into those records that he worked with before I ever knew that he was on them. And I was just like, man, I love this record. And then finding out that he was a part of it. So he's one of those bucket list producers that whenever I get a spare 20 grand to go do an EP with him or something like that, I would absolutely love to. Like Spitfire is a song I would love to just slide across his desk and get his opinion on and see how he feels about it.
That's the great thing about music is that if you have too much money and you don't know what to do with it, just go into music because it's unlimited ways to spend your money in really good ways.
But so like one of the things that I wanted to do was like, I mean, I didn't get into music because I thought I was going to make money. I got into music because I was like out of college and I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this instead of pursuing this 8-year government contract career that I was faced with multiple times over. And in doing that, I played a few shows, and within the first year we were like entering to win, like within the first 2 years of being in that band, we were on Warped Tour. So like I kind of got an unfair shake at feeling like a quick, semblance of success.
Right.
And we won our regional battle of the bands for Scranton. And so we lost one for this company ECI that was based out of Scranton, and like whoever the hometown heroes were won, and we ended up becoming friends with them. There was this band called the Heisman Hopefuls. Shout out to the Heisman Hopefuls. Those dudes they were awesome. And I think we lost like easily to them because they were from that area and they were able to drag out all their friends in droves. We just weren't going to compete with that. But they were also in the Battle of the Bands competition for Ernie Ball, and we beat them on that one, which to me felt like the bigger platform because it gave us a spot on the Ernie Ball stage and not the Kevin Says stage, which was like near the entrance of the venue that day. And like people were basically mostly just walking by it. And Ernie Ball stage is significantly smaller, but we were sharing it with a bunch of like national acts too. And we were like the last ones to go before they started. And so we're sharing the same stage as like Mayday Parade and I Set to Kill and like all these bands that I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like this is awesome.
This was like 2014 or something?
2010 was the first
2010,
year.
early. Okay.
And so then, that summer we took our wristbands and we snuck into the tour for the next 2 weeks. And they kind of caught us, but they were like, we weren't doing harm, and we were also like picking up trash when we were in the places to like just try to be like, hey, if they get mad at us, at least we can be like, hey, we're helping, we're trying to like clean shit up. Yeah. And they never kicked us off or asked us to leave or anything. But like, once we got to a point where the tour started going west again, we just branched off at like Cincinnati or whatever and came home. And then in 2011, we got a gig with their catering company where we would basically make stage meals for all the sound engineers at the stages that couldn't leave stage because they got bands going on all day to grab lunch. So we would like make them lunch, and then a stage runner would take their food to them, or we would take their food to them. And then we somehow got fucking roped in and making ham and cheese sandwiches and like peanut butter and jellies for all the truck and bus drivers, which is like 80 buses. We were literally masters of PB&Js and ham and cheese sandwiches by the end of that tour. And in return for doing that, we would get up every morning, check in with Damone Atkinson, who was like the stage manager for all the different stages for doing the set list, and be like, hey, is there room on any of the stages where we can play today? And we always toggle between the Ernie Ball stage or the Kevin Says stage. And we played more dates on Warped Tour than most signed acts that were playing Warped Tour were playing, because they would mostly only be on for like 2-week rotations and then they'd be off.
Yeah.
There were a few that most of the headliners, like A Day to Remember and The Used and Taking Back Sunday and the Thursday and bands like that, they were on the whole tour. But all the smaller like local regional acts, their labels were just pushing to get their band on for 2 weeks in an area that's close to their market so they could build their numbers up. And so within like 2 to 3 years, 4 years of being in this band, I was like nationally traveled and we left every summer. We would leave for Warped Tour. We would be like $20,000 in debt from like merch. We had to buy a new van the one year. And then we would climb out of that tour and be able to take home like a nice little paycheck each of us from and all of our oil changes are covered.
Being on a big tour is the way to do it, because you're kind of like in it with everybody else.
Yeah, you're looking at like tens of thousands, thousands to tens of thousands of people. I had friends
like going up by themselves in a van up and down the East Coast, and it just sounded like
miserable. Well, the first year was because we weren't in the tour, we weren't getting catering. Like our per diems were $5 a day, and like that's not enough to live off of even in 2010. Yeah. So like. And we were selling our CDs, $5 CDs. I swear by the $5 CD method. Like, I don't care how many songs are on it. $5 was the move. And people were willing to part with it in the lines. We would we were making like $1,000+ a day, which more than covered our gas and put stuff back. But the goal was we were trying to finance the next record and keep building and putting back and paying down any debt we were accruing and making sure our oil changes were taken care of and the engine was like running smoothly and everything.
Yeah.
But like we were diligent. We luckily the first year that we did it in 2011, we had this kid, Chaz Myers was our lead guitar player, and he was an actuarial science major here at Penn State University. So he was like our math whiz. So we didn't have to worry about road reports or any of our numbers matching up or lining anything. Like he was meticulous with the numbers. Shout out Chaz, you were the shit.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it helped big time because it set us up. We were prepped then to be able to continue on to the next year. Now he left the band before we went on the year in 2012, and we finished that record without him. And then we went and we toured on it, and we did just as well as we'd done the years prior. But then we came back. I bought a new van before that tour and drove all the way to. I flew to Seattle, picked it up at Pacific Fleet Sales, and drove it back. It was a diesel van we got for like $9,000, $11,000 out the door. And I drove it from Seattle to New York in 2 days, 2.5 days. And because we had to be in the studio recording in Baltimore after we picked up our guitar player in New York to go down to Baltimore, I was living like a wild life. I was like, what is my life right now? And it felt like it was surreal then. And I remember being home for like a month and then gone for 3 months and then home for 2 weeks and then gone for 3 months.
This is why people say like music is a young person's game. It's not just because
for sure.
On the surface, you think of all the young pop stars like, oh, labels want young people. Like that's not the only reason.
Right. They can survive the
you
meat
can survive
grinder. They're
just
put
like
them
not
through.
eating for like a week.
Right. And so
not eating healthy.
What I thought was really great about it was that I was getting all of this understanding of the road finally and really kind of figuring it out. And Warped Tour specifically is one of those tours where if you can do that tour in a van and a trailer, there is no tour on this planet you cannot do because you're never going to beat being in Arizona in 117 degree weather heat after a month of being out in summer heat all day, every day. You're already sunburned, multiple layers. The different tank tops you've worn have given you different degrees of sunburn stripes. Like I have so many pictures that pop up in my memories, basically starting from the middle of June until the end or the middle of August, which are just all like, oh, here I was in Atlanta, here I was in Idaho, here I was in, Council Bluffs, here I was in Portland. And every one of them you can just see. Like I have a picture of me with Derek Whibley from Sum 41, and I look like I have blackface on. Like I'm so tan that my face is like brown, and I have like bleached blonde hair from the sun bleaching it. I just looked ridiculous, and I'm like so stoked to see him. And he's probably like, I probably look like a crazy person. I probably look like the Guy Fieri of Warped Tour or something like that. It was insane.
Yeah.
But so when I left college and I started doing that, I didn't really have any ambition of making the money. I just wanted to see what pursuing that as a career kind of felt because I enjoyed for years.
Do that, like that's what a lot of people would do. It's like if you could just go, right into touring and Warped Tour, like as a 20, early 20 something.
But I came into the industry knowing nothing. I didn't know anything about how to go to a studio. My first several trips to a studio, I was in several very expensive studios.
If you listen to stories from producers, apparently that's very common. The band comes in, has no idea what they're doing.
Well, and it, to my credit, you were messing around with FL Studio, you said in like 2002. I bet the RAM and processing speed power you had available to you significantly different and way less of a controlled production environment than you have now, where you've got like a computer that handles what your software is giving it, and you're able to kind of create on the go and do things fluidly. You have multiple tracks that are armed and going at the same time, not printed, just so it's just reading.
Like prior to like 2010, it was still like pretty common for people to be using hardware and tape and like 4-track recorders. Like I don't know exactly like when the shift happened, but there were definitely people. I remember when I was like getting into production, learning about studios who were still using gear that like computer gear and everything that they had in like they got 96 is like because when that's back when back when Logic used to still be on PC or something, like some reason why they just like couldn't move forward to the next technology or people are just dug in and like there were a lot of old timers like
it might have been when they started doing
boomers
like they started doing the hyper-threaded processing.
Once they got their setup, they're like, this is my setup for the rest of my life, or at least this is my setup for the next like 20 years.
Right.
And then that's it, and then because they're just not used to having to relearn things every year or two.
I just got into it from a perspective where like I wanted to do the music. I was a delivery driver for years in my undergrad and then before I got into serving and bartending. And I basically was singing all my favorite records all night, every night. So my voice was like primed. I was like ready to go and play shows whenever, wherever. And in doing that, I got to play enough shows where you drive 3 or 4 hours to make $50, and you're like, this is not a sustainable model, because not only are we not making anything, we don't even know. We all need to pitch in $20 actually to get gas to get the buck home. And so it became this thing of like, okay, I got to start figuring out the business side of this. And I remember, so we were talking about, that charlatan that kind of like was scamming your friends and saying he had cancer and that. We had this person, I don't even know if their real name is this, but on the MySpace days, this person contacted us. Her name was Tenley Ryan, and she said she was a rep from Fuel by Ramen in Florida. And she told us that she discovered us and that she was taking us through a round of bands to the A&R reps that were going to go and decide which bands they wanted to sign. And at this point, this is like the height of, Fall Out Boy and a bunch of bands that are on Decadence Records or Fuel by Ramen, Panic at the Disco. And so we were in the running, she said, with these 5 other bands, and she let me know how it was going. She strung us along for like a month, and then she just disappeared, and we found out that it was like we contacted Fuel by Ramen directly, and they were like, we were so sorry, but that is not our process. That is not how we do things. And I don't know what to tell you other than to say that, like, that's not how it works. And Nick, our bass player, to this day has a vendetta that if he finds this person, he will go to jail for murder. Because it literally like set him up.
My advice to anybody who's trying to do something in music is like, if you have something like this, that's cool, but don't put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to this kind of stuff.
But I was new. This is like, This is
so I'm just saying for new people, because I had there was another situation also I had where a guy I knew this was in 20 or whatever, 12 or 13. I found a guy that I was just into dubstep. Dubstep was big. I was searching for stuff about dubstep on Craigslist like every day, and just because like all kinds of stuff was coming up. You wouldn't believe it. People that like were looking for roommates that like dubstep. People are like all kinds of stuff. People were looking to collaborate because it was that big, and people kind of forget how big and ubiquitous it was in like 20. I think it was like summer of 2012 to summer of 2013 or something like that. So, and then it started to die off. But
because then the bass heads took over, Bass Nectar, and all the people there at the gates just like, wow.
Well, yeah. I mean, Bass Nectar is actually old school, but anyway, he was before that. But what do you call it? So I joined. Basically, this one guy he's like, I'm in this band, like this trance band, and we do all these gigs, and like I want to do a dubstep band, and if you come and we do this dubstep band, I can get us gigs all day because I have all these connections. We play at like Camp Bisco and all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, cool, that sounds awesome, let's do it. And I did, and I met him up, and we would practice in his, like, he had a practice space in his apartment, which was like insane for Brooklyn because that's like not a
where
thing.
Do you find space, right?
Yeah, but he had an attic in this apartment that was like, it was super freaking hot in there because it was an uninsulated attic, but like he had this air conditioner, and he would like buy me like lunch because I was working. I had like a $10 an hour job at like this, like my first like real like web developer job that I ever had at the time, and just like barely making enough money to like make rent. And I would go over there and I would like DJ some songs. I wasn't even like producing my own songs. I was DJing other people's songs, and he was drumming, and that was going to be our act. And then after a couple months of that, finally we're like, okay, we're ready to start playing gigs. And he like goes to the person, and then he's like, sorry, this guy is not who he said he was. And after that, his interest in the project completely fell apart. Right. And then it was like, are we still doing this? And the answer was like, not really. And
it sucks the wind out of your sails.
I mean, we had fun, but like, we're not like, we don't even talk anymore. Like, we're not even friends. Like, it's not like even like I made a friend out of it or anything.
Right. That's a bummer. Yeah, that's hard.
It really did seem like he was just really into this idea. And then when this idea didn't work, he like didn't really care to talk to me anymore.
That's the blessing and the curse, right? Because one, it feels like maybe it was a little bit of a waste of time, other than the fact that you're kind of getting your reps.
But I did have fun. Yeah, it was like, just getting your lashings.
Yeah, but like that's a part of it, right? Like you have to, like, there's certain pitfalls that I love to help other bands kind of avoid. But there's just certain things that you kind of have to go through. And I think that overwhelming excitement that something big's about to happen for you and then it falling through is just kind of like it's like a rite of passage almost.
I think the downside that's the downside of kind of like being independent and struggling for a while. But on the flip side, when you're like one of these new artists that gets signed at 18 or something like that, the downside of that is that you are easily manipulated and controlled. So a lot of those artists get into these bad deals because they're so young.
For sure. 360
So like with me, I'm probably never going to get a bad deal because I will say like, I'll talk with you or I'll talk with somebody else. I'll be like, what do you guys think? And people, if it's a bad deal, like, or I'll just get a lawyer. I can afford to have a lawyer look over stuff
right
now, you know, and it'll work out because I'll be fully aware of what's going on. But like, if somebody had come to me at 18 and said, would you sign this piece of paper to like, we're going to like send you to Europe, except there's nothing that actually says that we're definitely going to do that in the contract, I probably would have signed it, you know? And,
you live and you learn though, right? Like part of that is you have to go through the experience. You don't know what you don't know before you don't realize you know it. You don't know it. So it's like you get to that point where you're like, I need to figure this out. Yeah, I mean, to me, what I loved about the music industry starting was that it was this constant learning process. I had no choice but to figure out how this was always going to be evolving and what I didn't know. Like you reach a step and you're like, oh, I just got asked a question by this promoter and I don't know what the answer to it is. I don't know what our Polestar numbers are. We didn't have any. Like we weren't playing venues that were keeping track of the attendance records to be able to put us on a Polestar map, you know, and that was like the thing for a while. And then, you know, up until maybe a year or two ago, the big thing was like how many monthly listeners you had. And then, you know, around then it was like how many followers you have on your Spotify and how are you kind of aggregating and what do your monthly streams look like? And like the metrics are constantly shifting. So it became really easy not too long ago for me to just finally be like, you know what, I got to stop relying on the outcome and start really enjoying what I'm doing about the process that I'm spending most of my time doing, which is in the writing, the recording, the production process, the music video conception process, you know, filming the music videos. And we want to do some really epic stuff for these next round of singles. Cause like we want to make a really, really solid push. And so it's like, okay, now I got to get our professional team behind us and reach out to the people that we work with that are the people that might actually be able to help us raise the revenue to get a really solid, instead of going the label route, right? It's like, I'd rather parcel out shares of the record than have
like
this
a Kickstarter kind of thing.
No, like business partners, basically people that are like, yeah, like I'll put up X thousand for this because I want, you know, 10% of the whatever. You can kind of then delineate what, you know, and decipher which percentages you want to dole out and what seems fair. And it's the negotiation process, which is, I think is like very vital in this age of music right now, that people just need to figure out how to negotiate a little bit better, because you could be doing more if there's just so many people that want to take 100% of the pie and get a lot of help with making the pie in the first place, but they don't want to delve any of it out. And it's like, it can't be like that. And honestly, if this is the last record you're going to write, I could see that hoarder's mentality. But the reality is you're not going to be able to be done after you release this EP or this 12-song record or this single. You know, like you're going to need to keep going. And so in the process of doing that, it should be, how do I build as many bridges as possible to get to where I want to go and burn the ones that are not serving you, basically. The ones that are basically there that are leeching off of you are not going to be helpful.
The flip side of that is you have to find people you trust. And I think that's like one of the things that I've always struggled with the music is like, they have to see the vision in the music. That's like the very, 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 you must have that. If somebody's coming, like so many people come at me and they see me as a resource of skill, which is definitely something that I offer, but they don't buy into the vision that I'm trying to do with my music. And it never works out, because at the end of the day, they want you to work on the thing that they want you to do. And they just expect that you'll do it because you've got the skills. You've said like, I will do this, but there's not really, it's not collaborative enough.
For me, I was like, to me, anything we do, if we were doing a remix of our song, you're the one doing the bulk of the work to make that remix. So I'm like, all I want. Yeah,
that's why that's in contrast to working with you guys, which has been nothing but you guys totally see the vision in the music. You want to go in the same direction that I'm going. We're very simpatico in that way, even though we have different skill sets, which is exactly.
That's what it is, man. Team building, good team building is that. It's not doing what I need. It's not me doing everything really well. It's me doing what I do well and letting my team members that do what they do really well do that well. And then sewing that together.
And it's not to say that you like always want to have to stay in your lane, but it's also like you.
Yeah, dude. I came over and
I'm always trying to like, you know, grow my skills and like go that next level. Like for me, getting into songwriting is like that next thing where it's like, if I'm always like, I'm going to stay in my lane, I'm going to work with songwriters, I'm going to do the production, then I'm not allowing myself to be like, but what if I really like this other thing? And like, maybe I do like I want to talk to you about this a bit is just the next thing I'm thinking about doing after this record is I'm trying to always think what's the next record because now
you're too far ahead. You're too far ahead for me. I'm literally like in the weeds with what I'm dealing with now, and you're like, what is my?
I'm like planning out my next 3 records
for sure.
now because.
But that's great, man. Because some people have that. You have a vision for that in a way that my buddy Mike is the same way. Like he can come up with a concept for a record before the record's written, and then everything else he does when he writes that record.
You always want to know where you're going. I mean, I think that's what it is. Like as soon as you feel like you're treading water. That creative spark just dries up.
Yeah,
as long as I just feel like I'm repeating myself, or if I feel like I have to repeat myself, or I feel like I am repeating myself, even if I get to where I'm going by making music that sounds kind of similar, and it just ends up sounding that way, that's better than trying to set out to I'm just gonna make this kind of music because that's what I do good and I'm good with that. Like I'm not that guy. But
no,
some people are like that. Some people just want to crank out and they want to, and that's better maybe for like beat makers or people that have like a signature sound or whatever. I just don't know if that's good. That's not really good for, in my opinion, for like an artist career. I don't want to. Yeah.
So we have right now with the 2 remixes with you, and then we had 2 new covers that we're doing. One we did for Nick's dad. We started writing it before he passed away, but we unfortunately didn't finish it until after he'd passed. But our cover of "You Are My Sunshine," and everybody that we've had that's heard it, like it's not going to be for everybody. I totally get it. It was just fun. And it was something that like Nick had made a promise to his dad when his dad got him his first guitar that he would, no matter what, he would learn how to play You Are My Sunshine. And so when his dad got diagnosed with cancer, before we played that show in October with Drowning Pool, he found out like the next week. And so he was like, hey, like guys, I don't really know how to ask this, but like my dad asked us if we would do like a cover of You Are My Sunshine the way we do covers. And I was like, absolutely. That's a no brainer. Like your dad asks nothing of us. And he's been like another father figure in my life for a really long time. So I was like, yeah, like let's do it.
It's kind of like a classic punk cover. Like
man. And we did
punk cover compilations.
Do you remember the band Set Your Goals?
No.
They were kind of like big in the Warped Tour scene in like that 2010, 11, 12 era, 9 maybe. And kind of in the vein of like Paramore a little bit. And we did this version of it. When I heard it, I was like, oh, I know exactly how I'm going to like deliver this song. And that's what it kind of reminds me of. So it kind of harkens back to like a throwback era of like pop punk jam. Yeah. So I think it's going to hit a totally different market than we are expecting. And I'm kind of enjoying not having any expectations going into it because we didn't do it for a result or an outcome. We did it for somebody that we were losing and we wanted to show them that love. And so the video I'm actually in the process of editing right now is like, it's kind of emotional, right? Because I know where it's headed whenever it's done, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But the other cover we just did a Louis Capaldi song, "Forget Me." I think I sent you the link to it. Like to me, if we do a cover and I send it to Alex, and Alex does the Nightcore version, that's our attempt at doing our original cover is our means of generating revenue off of just that aspect of it, like free marketing, and then his version goes to Nightcore, and that does well because it does well. Nightcore does well. And then we do a remix with you. It's like we've got 3 versions out of all we did was write 1 song, but we got 3 songs out of it. And so that's 3 potential streams of revenue from 3 different songs that are able to do it. And that's an easy way to just kind of expand out with what we're doing and create like value where everybody is. Like with Alex for our Nightcore split, we just do a 50-50 split. He's like, I got the distribution. You're going to make money on it. Give me 50-50. I need fodder for this playlist that I'm building. And I'm like, bet, do it. He's got several 100,000 monthly listeners. Go for it. Yeah. And then with you, it's like, okay, I want to tap into this realm. And it's like, it's an area of hearing this song in a way that we didn't envision it, but I definitely hear the space for where it belongs there. And you, dude, I mean, you've honed it in. Like I've tried to make sure that we haven't gotten to release anything with you yet. So like, I'm excited these songs are finally going to get to go out because we've been talking for almost 2 years as of like this upcoming fall. And so to get these songs out now, finally, and to have seen like, your influence on Spitfire, like when that song drops, like everybody I've shown it to is like, that's catchy as fuck. Like I
know it sounds so full now because of like I know it's like hard. Sometimes it's hard to hear all the keyboard work I did at least in the current version, but it just I know that it's like contributing to that like epic
full
like
wall
hugeness.
Of sound. Yeah.
You definitely hear like the string parts though. Like that's definitely in there 100%.
Well, we kind of with the first mix I sent you. I don't know if I sent you the version 2 that we just got back earlier this week.
You sent me that.
Yeah. I did so I'm like making mix notes right now to kind of send back this weekend, and then we'll see when it's done. And so that sucks that it takes us 2 weeks to get through the mix process, but that's on us because I like to spend time cycling through and listening to it.
I feel like
it's nothing. It's nothing.
I've definitely spent longer than that.
But in my brain, I'm like, get it done, get it ready for release. But I'm like, we're not releasing this until the fall.
The other thing about mixing is like there's no like correct. Sometimes there's just like no right answers. Like it's not like you can follow if it like it's like you just follow a template and then that ends up with a good mix.
Yeah, it's just like saying like, hey, what's your vocal chain for your vocal effects? It's like that doesn't.
That's
you can't do that.
Point, but like you have to really dial it in because like if it's in a different maybe if the song maybe you have two songs that are in the exact same key with the exact same instruments and like the vocals are in the exact same register. Maybe, but I still feel like there'll be
definitely not
automations, right? And like there's so much you can do now. And that's the other like double-edged sword with all this production like technology is that the more you can do, the more you have to do because
this mix has like easily 100+ tracks. Like it's such a dense mix that like getting it to fit into one.
How many guitars is it? Probably like
I would 20. Have to go through and look if that. I mean, parts that are separate enough that could be treated on the same track.
It's probably double tracked, like
quad track for guitars.
Like then how many guitar parts are playing?
Right,
like,
exactly.
So you got quad tracked, but then it's like
and we got like
there's 4.
We got
parts.
7 strings. We've got the Telecaster. We've got the bass tracks. We've got all the drums. We've got all the vocal takes, all the harmony vocal takes, all of the screaming takes.
And the drums are all separated on different tracks too.
Yep. And so what's great about it is that like first off, I love Bert for his mixes. Like I remember being on tour with his band Chunk, No Captain Chunk with Our Last Night whenever I was doing merch for them and hearing their demo mixes, and their demo mixes sounded better than the mixes that they had already released. And they were like, well, yeah, it's because our label made us make sure that so-and-so mixed and mastered this because they have that plug with them and they needed to he wanted to have that credit and they wanted to build him up to get their next bands to do records with him. And I was like, but this sounds better. And they were like, yeah, we know. And so I knew immediately. I was like,
this is the other thing too. I've had the same thing working with mix engineers where I worked like so long with mix engineers only to end up with something that doesn't sound as good to me as the demo. And this is why I just mix my own stuff now and I master everything. And it is a lot of work. And now that I'm getting into songwriting and recording vocals, I'm like, oh my God, do I really I thought this was all a lot of work before. Now, like,
and it's an extra rabbit hole.
Vocals are like its own rabbit hole.
Oh yeah, dude.
And you can spend all day, especially and then it's almost too much. That's why I'm actually thinking about trying to work with a producer to just do my own vocals because it's almost like I can't like do everything with it. It's like I can't be objective about it. And
so you got to get somebody that you trust.
I need somebody to like kind of like collab with who's a producer who can like do some production with me and like
Jordan Krebs. If you talked to Jordan at all,
I was thinking,
bro, he's loved to do it, and I think he actually just started. He just started doing.
I saw a TikTok video that was like came up that he made that was like, I want to work with people, and I'm like, oh shit, this feels like this is like
your calling, right. Why did it end up on your For You page? The algorithm knows you, motherfucker. Yeah, no. And what's funny is he is super super talented. He actually just started an LLC with a friend of his, and they're going to do some like beat licensing. And like, dude, get in on that. Like, you could slide in there and help out and be a part of that. No problem.
Yeah, we want to do like what you were saying. Actually, it's funny because I was listening to your this podcast on the way here, and you were talking with I forget who the guest was, but about how you like to do pro bono stuff, and like if you can work out something where like you working on a project, you do something for them, they do something for you. Like that's how I want to work too. Like
you have to have that reciprocation.
People.
Yeah,
as far as like we can figure out a way where like I can help, like we can work on a project. Like I can help do production on your project, and you could like help do production on my project. Collab, even if it's electronic, if it's rock, like I want to have like my foot in both worlds right now because I'm already there, like with you guys, and also like it's for me. Doing my own vocal performances, it's just easier for me to do over a rock vibe to get that energy versus like doing it over beats because that's where the singers that I look up to are. They're in rock. I don't have a lot of people I look up to more in like as far as vocalists go in more like the pop genre or R&B or anything like that. Just that's not at least not in my vision of what I'm trying to do.
Right.
So I'm like, obviously like bands like yours, like bands like all these people we've been talking about, Bring Me, like all that. That's where not that I have anywhere near that level of talent, but like there's a let's see what I can do in this sound world. Then this is my new vision for this record is like, I want to write a rock record that I'm going to like then maybe probably remix into something. And then I think the remix record is going to be like the real record, and the rock record, maybe I'll release, maybe I won't, or maybe I'll put it like as a Patreon thing where some people can have it, because yes, fully producing a rock record the way that it would need to be done is a huge undertaking that I don't want to do. But if I want to make a bunch of rock demos and then get the vocals and then remix them, that feels like me. That feels like what I can do.
Well, I love that, like, where Spitfire began, when I sent you the track to be like, hey, I'd love to have you, like, kind of take a pass at this and see what you come up with. It shifted drastically. And then the third version after that was the version that Nate got his hands back in after he had some stems from you and kind of put it into a realm where he wanted it to be. And then there was it was a really true collaborative process, right? Because it kept going back and forth.
All I wanted to do with that song was like help you guys like get through the sort of like whatever writer's block you were doing.
You definitely did.
That was my goal, because that's what you're asking for. Like always, like I almost treated it like a work for hire kind of thing, where I'm like, I'm just going in, like, give me the prompt, and I had to kind of like get it out of you guys a little bit. I kind of like got the idea of what the prompt was. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this, because at the end of the day, I have to kind of treat it that way. 'Cause it's not my song. It's your song. So I'm trying to just be supportive where I can support, you know?
But what was great about it is that your support came in such a way where like, it was really complimentary, because it was like what I felt like we were missing, you fully brought to the table. And to me, 9 times out of 10, when I'm writing to something, I'm not doing it from the acoustic guitar perspective. Like everybody can shit on that all they want to. Like you can, if I put this into, 4 piano chords and I like did it that way, maybe I would write something for that would sound that I could then transpose over into what the rock song's going to be. But when I'm writing to our demos, when I have a demo that comes in, it's like a scratch demo of an idea that somebody's put together. It's got drums and bass and guitar, and like, they're usually like, it's like an intro, a verse and a chorus, and maybe like another verse with like a chorus and a bridge. And then we don't really kind of fully flesh them out until we know we're definitely going to work on that song. But it's hard when it's just the rock instrumental, because part of what I love about rock music isn't just the instrumentation. It's the backing tracks and the atmosphere, the ambience that's kind of built in behind it. And those are the things that I loved about Hybrid Theory from Linkin Park, and Meteor from Linkin Park, and Bring Me the Horizon's last like 6 records.
So it's the production. The
production aspect of it is very important to me. And like, if you can set the actual atmosphere that I feel like I'm standing in whenever I track with my in-ears in. So when I'm recording, it's all in my head. Like I close my eyes. I have like relatively dim lighting, so I can kind of feel like I'm in this space hearing the song for the first time whenever I'm trying to like demo out melodies or whatever in the studio. But then there's a lot of times where I'm just jamming that record while I'm driving around. And whenever we had finally had some tracks from you, and we'd had that third incarnation that was really kind of closer to where the song is now, but it's even still obviously developed a little bit since then. I remember I was driving home from a gig that I was doing in Harrisburg, and I just had it on, and I had this melody that kept coming to my head while I was jamming, and I was like, oh, I think I might have to run with that. And it seemed really reminiscent of like, I don't know, Nirvana and like maybe some like old Alice in Chains. And I was like, that's weird. I don't know why I'm feeling that pulled towards that melody or whatever it was that I was kind of gravitating towards. But then as I start, and it was just lip syncing and dubbing melodies, ad-libbing fucking dumb words and being like, and then I had the chorus before I had the verses, and the chorus was like my favorite part. I was like, I cannot wait for
I'm
this
actually
song
surprised that I heard the latest version that you like tweaked the chorus a bit.
Yeah.
And I as a songwriter myself, I know how hard it is sometimes
to make that adjustment
hear it in your head a certain way. But I think I like the tweak. It was like,
same.
Ooh, I like that. A little extra like something.
It also
to remember.
It also kind of calls back the first 2 lines of it kind of call back to the same melody, even though they're not like perfectly aligned with each other. And so because of that, it feels like it repeats, but it doesn't. And so I like that it builds this familiarity as you go along. And dude, like this latest version I went through after we got the first version and the second version with the harmonies in, I went through and I was like, you know what? There's this thing that Kellen Quinn does in Sleeping with Sirens where like right before like a heavier part, he'll do this, like he'll sing a part of a line and then he ends on like this scream, like he screams like just like the last syllable or maybe 2 or whatever of a word. And if you do it in the right place, it feels really, really it feels good, like from the observational musician perspective. And so I remember just being like, you know what, I can definitely hear this song having me delivering that line. Instead of it just being a repeat, it felt like it was too repetitive at that point by the end. But we go into this like halftime breakdown at the end of it, of that riff, that intro riff that starts it. So it feels like real heavy and it slams. But I was like, the delivery doesn't really lead into like sending you off into that. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to track this line real quick. So I tracked like 5 or 6 takes and I sent it over to him. And I was like, I'd like you to mix this in for that last delivery if you can. And he did it. And I sent it to like the few people that I litmus test my mixes off of. And they were like, yes, I got goosebumps. Like the first time I heard it, I was like, that sounded better than it did whenever I was tracking it, obviously, because I was tracking to an old mix. So I didn't have like the current mix to track to. And then whenever I heard it in the context of the full song, I was like, damn.
Well, it's fun to see. I like to be like, it was really great about this collab and also the timing of everything right now is that meanwhile, I'm working on my own stuff, but I love it when it's like, I did like a day or two of work on this, and then I get to see it kind of come to fruition, and I don't have to do anything else. It's like, yes.
Right.
And it sounds like the early demo version that I worked on. Let's just say it was super rough and it didn't have a verse or anything. And I remember showing it to my wife. It sounded
very Rage Against the Machine at the very beginning.
I was really excited about it though, because I hadn't done anything like that in a while. So I showed it to my wife and I could tell she just like she couldn't see the vision of the song. Yeah. And I mean, I'm like, I get it. I understand, but I still have to show it to you because I'm like excited. And
please just muscle through this, babe.
And it's like, and the chorus was there, but now it's now because of that tweak, it's like quite different, but it's good to see the process, and it's so different than my process where I'm like, I'm gonna work on this song, and then obviously I'm the only one working on it. So like when I'm not working on it, it's not getting worked on.
Right. In this case, we always kind of had things going on behind the scenes, and we were sitting on stuff where it was like, hey, this song's got to get done. I'm glad that it took as long as it did. I really wish it didn't take a full year and some change to get through. But part of it was we lost our guitar player. Like Aaron was like a big part of our songwriting process.
Right. So you have to build the new process kind of from scratch a little bit.
Yeah. And it felt like almost kind of insensitive for us to be releasing music within like a few months of him passing away. But it was one of those things where it was like, if we fall off this horse and stay the fuck down, we're not going to get back up because it's going to be too hard to kind of get the wheels turning again. Yeah. And we'd already had that come to Jesus moment. We were like, we're never going to stop doing this. We're always going to be writing. We're always going to be the musicians we are. So insofar as we can always have remote studios and always get together to film videos and always get together to, even if we can't get together, still be able to write together, we're going to do it. So like, let's put our money where our mouths are. And we released more music that year than we had in the previous 6. And then, part of these new songs was like, I think there are people that are going to have an expectation of what they're going to hear coming out of us moving forward. And I don't think that it's going to be something that I want to hear as better or worse than what we were doing before, but it's going to be a very clear progression and a change. And in like some of the like best ways, like our manager, I love when I send him stuff because he almost exclusively is like, cool. Let me know when it's done. And I'm like, hey, all right, cool. And we drag our ass in getting something done. But when I sent him like the V2 mix of this, he was like, dude, this slaps. Like we're definitely going to do some big things with this in the fall. And I was like, perfect. Yeah.
And I definitely would like to get at some point, in a session and like look at what you guys are all doing on the session so that I can learn some of that. Cause like I definitely don't produce rock very much, and when I do, it's it sounds very electronic because that's just the world I'm in, and a lot of times I'm literally just programming everything by hand.
I mean, I think it goes without saying that we should then have a Spitfire remix. Like that goes hand in hand, and do again straight 50-50 split.
Think about what the actual remix would be, but I feel like with some of my remixes are like they're almost not remixes in the sense that. Like, I think with the Bad Habits remix, I just it was just like a riff I had been working on at the time, and I threw it on, and I was like, okay. And it doesn't actually follow the chords or the bass line. Yeah, and it works, and especially works with the stems you gave me in a way where like there's certain parts of the ways you produce it that I just hit with me, and it wouldn't necessarily be the case if it was the original version of the song, which has different production. Yeah. So that's interesting too. And then,
so what we'll do is
Spitfire too.
We'll get the mastered stems back after we get the actual. We have we sign off on what the final master for this is, but then we also have all the the actual stems for the track as well. So like I can send you both and you can take and choose and pluck whatever you want.
And I think like going like that, I don't know. The track has like that sort of like 90s grunge almost feel to it. I'm sure you would agree. And like almost like but where there's like a little bit of more of a blues and like back, I don't know, I say blues, but like it's your face, like not quite, but like definitely rock.
I mean, it's rock, so it's blues.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That's the baseline for it.
Yeah. When I hear like, I don't know, like almost like a Southern rock kind of like.
Yeah, man, it hits in a really weird way because it's like there are parts of it because it's on the 7-string.
Like, can I say Southern rock? I don't know. Can I say? I know maybe. Can I say grunge? I say yeah.
I want when it comes out to hear what people's reactions to it are. Like, I can't wait to hear like what people.
Don't let me taint poison the well against the song. No, point being, I would love, even though. On the one hand, I'm like, well, I could lean into that because I don't usually do that kind of thing. But also, it might be more fun. It's just going in a completely different direction and going more like super urban or something, like going like super like, hip hop or something with it, which is like totally.
Do both. We'll have three. We'll have like totally when it drops, there's 3 single remix versions. We can hit totally different stations on Sirius XM.
I'll like edit your voice to make it sound like you're rapping the whole time.
Yeah. I'll just do a rap delivery of it. Yeah, man, I feel like that was a really seamless process for an original song, and that was very different, obviously, from the covers, because whereas the covers we just do, and then we hand them to you, and we're like, do you want to work with this? Do you want whatever?
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm really excited that we're about to start getting stuff out and dropping it, and it's going to be great to smack both of our algorithms. I feel like it's one of those things where you can kind of pepper it in between other releases you have going on. It's just like an algorithm.
It actually came out. It was perfect timing for me because like I know I had been working on this record that I'm working on right now for like a couple months, like really since I don't know, maybe December, January, and then like stuff we worked on was in Janury. And I'm like,
but I saw Venkman versions from December for sure. So like,
I think maybe it was end of December I started it. But anyway, like it's been getting to me. Like I've been getting a little close to like burnout. So I've been trying to like just allow myself to step away from it and just be like, I need to put this away. Like maybe I'll just do something else for a minute just to give myself some space. And because I had this whole schedule in my mind and I realized that the schedule inadvertently was giving me so much anxiety.
For sure. It's a noose you're putting around your own neck.
I'm having a very like I have this issue where like something might be stressing me out, but like I'm not aware, and then it like comes out in like physical symptoms where I'm like getting like terrible migraine headaches, and I'm like, what is happening? And then I realize is like, oh, like I'm putting way too much pressure on myself with this project.
Yeah, I feel like that doesn't get discussed enough. Right? Like when you have a team of people that are holding you to a deadline, if you're like me and you're this like fuck authority kind of figure, I'm like, yeah, you'll get it when I get it to you. Like, chill out. But when it's my deadline, it's like I set this for myself, and now I feel like I'm failing myself if I don't uphold this. Like, sort of, it's and the sad part of it is it's completely arbitrary. Right?
It is
like,
arbitrary, and that's like it's so hard to like. On the one hand, you do have to set like goals for yourself and then it can't just be in the next 10 years, I'm going to finish this album. It has to be, I'm going to try to finish this album as soon as freaking possible. But at the same time, when something like that happens, like what happened with me is so again, going back to like the songwriter thing, like I wanted this next record to be my first record that had, when I say record, I'm talking about an album, 10 songs, basically, by the way. So
BT dubs,
not like, you could just like, people just say a record and they mean one track sometimes. So, So with this album, I wanted to like really debut myself as a vocalist, as well as, songwriter, everything else. But working with people that are way better than me all the time, it's always like it's super imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I knew, of course I knew I'm setting myself up for that, but at the same time, I'm also recording demos. I'm showing them to people. I'm getting positive feedback, and every now and again, I'm like, this sounds really good. But then you go back and you listen, you're like, it doesn't sound as good as whatever. It doesn't sound as good as what I do with you or whatever. So it's this like really bad, and plus the deadline, plus the quality level of the music that I've been releasing for the past 3 years has to be for me.
Right. But dude, that's a metric you've set for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I think it's super important to have those metrics for success outlined for yourself, so you can say what you got to be able to avoid making the perfect the enemy of the good, which is like that's like the ultimate thing that you're kind of like we're always as creatives kind of fighting against.
It's got to ship. It's got to get out the door.
It's got to go out the door. So there's got to be a point where I can say this is done. And it's easier if you say, well, I know that, like, to me, when we were talking about the mix earlier, what makes a good mix to me is I'll know it when I hear it. Like, I'll reference all the places that I listen to music. But for the most part, as long as I can fundamentally still hear all of the dynamics that are involved in the song in their own space and realm where they belong, then I'm happy. If like, the chorus doesn't have enough of a die off right before it so that when the chorus hits, it slams, I'm going to be a little frustrated with the mix because I'm going to be like, this doesn't hit the way I wanted it to.
You just get an ear. You listen to a lot of music. You just get an ear for like what sounds good. And you use your references. It's like somebody can send me a mix. I'm not going to sit there. Like, I don't know. There's all these like different phases of the producer where like you want to like, some people, they want to like sound smart, so they go and they nitpick every little thing. If you send me a mix,
maybe you could just
listen to it.
Maybe you can low pass that around the 12K range, and then just drop that down like 60 dB.
I'll tell you, something bothers me though. Like somebody sent me a mix, and I was like, I hate your snare. I'm sorry. I just hate this. It's playing the whole song. Here's my suggestions from why. I don't know. Like I just don't like it. I don't know exactly why I don't like it, but here's some things that I would do if I were you. I would like, make the tail a lot shorter. I would maybe like, or whatever. I would just like say what it is. Like, that's my biggest thing. I'm not going to, but like,
that's a tonal shift.
I'm not going to, yeah, it is. But I'm like, I wouldn't move forward until I fixed it. But that's my opinion.
Right. But
you don't have to take it. But I'm not going to go and like nitpick your sub bass at that point because the snare is glaring wrong to me.
Right.
And if you're saying you might come back and be like, look, we're not singing the snare. Do you have any other notes? I might be like, okay, let me go try to listen to the rest of it. But
right. But the positive corollary to that is that you're at least offering like constructive, positive feedback. Like if you can say it's not that, and I feel like these are the issues, you can actually address it, which is significantly better than somebody being like, it just sucks. It's like, what does that mean?
Like somebody sent me a mix the other day and he's like, do you have feedback? And I just listened to it and I was like, it sounds good. I don't have any issues. Like I'm not going to like I'm not going to like go do everything I would do for my own mixes because you're not me. Like if it was me, but if it's a different genre than I'm trying to do, they might want a lot of dynamics. They might not want it to be that loud. They might like for me, I'm like always trying to like push the loudness.
You're in the thick of the loudness wars.
I'm in the thick of the loudness wars, and I don't know if I really want to be there. But it's at the same time like, well, Millennium and Seven Lines and all these ones that I'm supposed to be in the same genre as are hitting like -3 loofs in the drop. So I kind of feel like I have to hit -3 loofs in the drop, otherwise
I'm not competing.
Not going to hit if a DJ wants to drop it in a set, and that's.
But at least on the flip side, when you're giving these mix notes, you're not just being a yes man, right? Yeah. Like you're not be like, yep, that's great. Yep, yeah, I love it, and like working towards getting it out the door.
I'm definitely gonna like listen to it, and like if I might not listen to it right away, but I will listen to it, and I will like put my entire attention on it for one listen, and then I might listen again. Like, if I really like it, I'll listen again. But like, I can like listen to it one time and be like, if there's anything that bothers me, and as long as I'm paying attention to it, I think I can catch it. But like, if it's something that you only catch after 4 listens, then is it really an issue?
Yeah. So with the first V1 and V1 and V1.2 of this mix for Spitfire, it was like I had all these notes out of the gate, and I was like, I kind of sat on it for a day. And part of what helped me was Jordan. I was listening to it I was talking to him about it, and he was like, honestly, man, he's like, I think a lot of these mixed decisions were intentional. And he was like, I think if you shift too much, you're going to have to kind of rebalance the track to be able to salvage the dynamics in the same way. And I was like, yeah, that's fair. I want some clarity and I want the dynamics, but I want the loudness too, and the boom and the hits at the moment. I want the moment building to still exist.
Right.
And so
it's like automation, probably.
Partially, yeah. And he does a lot of outboard compression. He's got a really nice studio, a lot of analog gear, and he like reamps a lot of stuff. So it's like we're sending him the DIs plus printed tracks to kind of pick and choose as he sees fit. And his ear is just, he gets what we're going for. And V1, like not what I would have wanted to be the final master, but pretty fucking close. Like it's in that 90% range, 95% range. I'm like, anything that I would make adjustments to are going to just be like these tweaks, and like you said, like an automation or an adjustment here, or maybe I feel like my vocal's a little too saturated, or it's not. It's saturated well, but it's not really like wet. Like there's no like. I'd like to hear maybe a slight degree more of of an effects chain kind of involved in that. I don't know what that is exactly, like how I would want to handle it, but I trust him to play around and find it. And so in the notes, I'm pretty specific in saying that, where I'm like, I feel bad giving notes, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't want you to think that you did something wrong. But I realize that's a part of his process. He's like, I get it to where I think it's like, okay, this is baseline. Right. Now we make the tweaks from here. And so as specific as I can be, I'm like, here are the notes. I think it was down to 10 notes. Right. And most of them are super quick adjustments. But then like the one note that we wanted was like, it does feel like there's this higher frequency range. It's kind of piercing the whole time. And I think that's killing my ability to hear the dynamics of everything. And so he was like, okay, so I basically had to rebalance this mix to take out some of those issues you're talking about. And in doing that, it's going to sound a little bit different, but it's still great. And I thought it was a big improvement between mix 1 and mix 2. And, having the harmonies in there, and then altering some of the screams, and then having my final scream at the end of the song, like that, to me, the part that sells on the song being done is that I feel like all of the moments that I wanted to hear in it are hit. And the intro is like, it's there, I feel that intro. And at the outro, I'm like, yes, this feels like the end of this song.
Right.
And so, I mean, I'm really, really happy with it. I'm excited that I'm going to sit on it for like another day or two. We'll make any final last second adjustment notes that we have. And then it should be kind of like, that should be a wrap for it. And then it's ready to start going and getting album artwork made and getting t-shirts made to get paired with it for the merch release for whenever it hits Spotify. Cause we launched our merch store and,
that with Mike, did you?
Yeah. Okay. Did you do yours with him yet or no?
No, I'm going to.
Yeah, definitely do, man. It's a no-brainer. Like if you're putting up any kind of numbers and you can get a release and have a shirt released with it, and you're capable of doing a lot of the graphic design yourself to be able to say, this is what I want to be the pairing for this. I'm excited for the Legends Never Die remix album artwork. That's sick. Like I'm really excited for a lot of the things that we have coming up.
I know. Yeah. And especially cause like, again, with the timing and everything, it really worked out for me. I was able to like really say, I'm going to allow myself to just put the record down because I know we have all these releases coming out, and then I'm just going to be, I'm here for you, man. In terms of, whatever we need to do for the release, because I've cleared my own, other releases. I pushed back some of the stuff I'm going to do so that
de-stress yourself, lower your cortisol levels a little bit.
Totally. I think I've put myself through enough and just need to like,
I can tell it was eating you up.
I need to like write some, it comes down to like, I think I didn't spend enough time writing I should have written like twice as many songs that were potentially going to go on the album, because then once I started cutting, I was getting down to it. And then I actually pulled the song. I think it was when you came over last time I showed you the new song. I kind of pulled out of my butt from a old demo vocal that somebody sent me, and from an old like random demo that I put out. And that one just, I also did the other day. I'm like, this is good. I had probably 2 weeks I hadn't listened to it, and I'm listening to it again. And I'm like, okay, this one still counts. So like, this is still going to be on the record. So I'm like, I did that, but when it comes to the 3 vocal ones that I had done myself, I don't know. I go back and forth because it's that like, I can't be objective about it thing, because I want it to be as good as the songs that I listen to, that of people I look up to. And I'm like, it's going to be different because I'm not
them. It's best. Not that space. There's so many variables that are not going to make it the same. It's at a certain point you have to make peace with knowing that you can't possibly know what the reach of something could be, because you may think this is like not as good, and somebody else might be like, this is fucking way better.
And I'm going through and like trying to my process now is just like, okay, if I don't think this is the thing, then let's try. You have to just try something else.
What is the thing?
And then I'll get the different things. And if a lot of times the new thing is worse than what I had, and then I'll be like, well, this just shows that what I had before is not that bad, because clearly it could be worse.
Right. Yeah. And I've proven it myself in my own arena.
And like I think early on when I was doing production, like when you like sort of start to ruin a song, I mean, I think that was the death knell for a lot of songs for me, is like when you're working on a song so long that it starts to get worse.
The point of diminishing returns.
You are like, you don't know what to do. You're like, I have no idea what to do, and you just move on. And now I'm at a point where I can sort of recognize these things and see where things are going, and then go back to an earlier version, start from there. Especially when it comes to mixing and mastering, I'll do that. I'll push it loud, push it loud, push it loud, push it wide, push it wide, push it wide, and then I'll get to and then I'll come back to it. I'll be like, oof, this is terrible.
Oh, well,
and I'll go back a couple versions.
That's that ear fatigue setting in because you're trying to impress your ears when they're bored or like exhausted, and you're like, no, let me push this a little harder in a way that might make it seem more interesting.
Push it as far as it'll go, just so I know how hard I can push it, and then I'll reel it back. But sometimes
that's good too. I think you
do so many things in the mix that are bad decisions at once that you have to kind of like just go back.
You have to go like halfway back.
Yeah, because sometimes it'll be like late at night. I'll be like, what if I just tweak? What if I just add another transient shaper in here? And like, what if I just did? And it's just a mess. But it sounds.
I think you're onto something with like the cycling aspect of where you kind of go through and kind of spend time apart to then go back into songs. I think that's vital. And since you kind of put a name to it for me, I've started adopting that into my editing process for video and everything, because now I'm like, oh, this doesn't flow anywhere near as well as I think it does, or I thought it did whenever I was doing it. And that's a good thing to do. Like, you need to give yourself separation from the art.
So I want to like talk about this real quick, because this is kind of like something that could be helpful to anybody. Is I did this program called the Magic Music Machine, which is like this guy Mike Monday, who's runs it's kind of a he's like a music coach, and he basically came up with the system that I use. So, and it's free. You can go, if you go search for Mike Monday, he's on Spotify. He has a podcast, and if you follow any of his podcasts, he talks about this thing, and where you can like go get it, and he has a template, and he one podcast is basically just him describing the system. Like every episode is a different episode describing like one of the aspects of the system.
You find it, send me a link to it, and I'll put a link in the description for the podcast and YouTube video.
You could use it for editing, though. You could use it for other things. You could use it for vocals. You could use the.
Do you know where he's based out of?
He's in Australia.
All right. So there's no chance I'm getting him on the podcast unless I do a remote episode. No. I should have him on. I should talk to him. It'd be something interesting to talk to about.
He's super amazing. And I've like, if it wasn't for some of the stuff that I learned from him, I don't know if I'd still be doing music, because he's really taught me how to like, especially because I know that he's said that he has ADHD, and I think there's something about
neurodivergence and music creation.
Well, there's something. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like learning systems for doing things, and like, not being, I was going to say before, I don't think I said, was that like one of the hardest things sometimes is like, you're so focused on what you think that the end product needs to sound like, that and you want it. You just want that instant gratification, that sitting down to just write something that is just from scratch. It's not, it's not going to sound like anything. And some of it's so hard to just force yourself to go through those sessions and just make that shitty demo and make that shitty vocal recording, and you just have to do it, because then you have something to improve.
Right. And
if you have enough things that you are, enough, irons in the fire, where you've got all these different things that you can improve, you can sort of compare them to one another. This is kind of like the whole essence of what he teaches, is like, you need to write music constantly, because then you're not comparing your music to what somebody else is doing. You're saying, what is the best song among these 10 songs that are my best songs? And how can and then you can sort of use what you do on one song to sort of influence the other. So either I did this on this song, so I want to do maybe the same thing on this song because I have a similar problem. Or you could say, I solved this problem this way, I want to solve this problem the opposite way on this song. So then through creating a body of work, you're getting iron sharpens iron, or whatever.
Yeah, certainly.
So like,
well, you kind of touched on it earlier, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I think you're definitely right insofar as like, it's important to write more songs than you're trying to place on the record. Like Meteora is celebrating its 20th anniversary right now, and actually El Cielo Dredge, their album is what's sitting at the front of this desk, because I ordered it like almost like 7 or 8, 9 months ago, and it finally came in yesterday. So I was like, oh, and this is a transformative record for me in my life in terms of like the music that I listen to. But Meteora has been releasing like singles, and so you're hearing new songs with Chester Bennington's voice on them from the Meteora album that didn't make it to the record. And you can almost, if you listen to them, hear why, because you're like, oh yeah, you had this song on the record, and this is pretty close to that in terms of the feel and vibe. So I can see why you wouldn't want to stack two of these anywhere on the same record together, or near each other on that record at least.
Yeah.
And so, you just see proof of what makes it to what sits on the cutting room floor when Meteora comes out, and it's just a fucking, 11, 12 song record or whatever. And
Yeah.
and now we're seeing these new songs.
Like,
I'm like, these are also good, and they're also like, we're kind of being blessed with them right now because Chester's gone. So like, there's no chance to hear new Linkin Park as we know it.
Now that we have the AI,
yeah,
right. Chester's songs,
and they're a pretty tech progressive band. Like Mike Shinoda, he's on the board for Audio Technica, and I think they were a sponsor for them for a while, and then I think he's like bought into the company now. But like, I mean, Joe Hahn, they've had like a very tech progressive band in their place. Their drummer has like pad drums and then actual drums that he's playing live to hit all the different tones that they do.
What's going to be interesting is to see if like, because you've got now like people are able to make vocal models out of anybody's voice that they can have recordings of. Right. So you've seen, I haven't talked about it with you, I don't think, but there was that big news story because there was a Drake
and Weeknd song
that was like not, and it sounded perfect, right? Or it sounded
perfect.
Good enough for
passable,
most people.
Right.
Yeah, passable. So the idea that a band could release new music having the vocals of their deceased lead singer is definitely already a reality. The question is it who is going to be the first band that does it before the fans do it? Because the thing is, it's already, the fans are going to start doing it.
Right.
People are going to start making new songs with Chester on it. But don't you think for the legacy of the band should be the one to do it first? I mean, I think.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think we get to.
This is
It is because we get to a point where we have to be like, what art is sacred to us?
There's an argument to be made that it should be the band that does it.
And I devil's advocate this all the time. Like I'm for both because
legally you're not going to be able to stop this stuff from happening. We've seen every time the music industry.
Ice-T just said the other day that he was like, if anybody uses my voice to do anything, I'm going to sue them. It's like, good luck. You're going to get inundated with good. You're not going to be able to hire enough lawyers to be able
to find out who these people are. Like, it's going to be anonymous people posting on Newgrounds or SoundCloud. Right. This is where like a lot of this stuff is happening in Discord. Like a lot of this stuff's happening. Like I'm already on like 2 different Discord AI vocal servers because Discord is where this stuff is proliferating right now.
Right.
And
it's the breeding grounds for it ultimately. Yeah. And like that's where we're going to see how that art cultivates. I think it comes down to the appreciation for art in our current respective cultural landscape as is going to be how we move forward with using it.
Yeah, I mean, as like somebody that kind of came up as a remixer, I guess it's very exciting for me because it's like I love seeing. I appreciate mashups. I appreciate remixes.
Right.
This is like, right now I have an app called RipX where you can just drag in any song and it'll automatically separate out the stems for you, and it's not perfect,
but it's close.
But I can take songs and mute the vocals and pick the vocals and put them in another song, and like this came out and I'm like, if this had come out like 10 years ago when I was more interested in doing DJing and mashups, not that I don't still, I don't really do mashups, but like I was definitely like in a different headspace back then. This would have been amazing, except it came out a little too late for me, but I could still use it. But it's like, what am I using it for? I'm mostly just taking vocals out of songs, but still, it's insane.
What's funny is I feel like I'm seeing like a full circle moment 20 years later from like the Kazaa, LimeWire, Morpheus, peer-to-peer sharing.
I know, it feels like that.
I remember finding bands that I was like, oh, I'm looking for this record, and I would download it. And I found a band called Spiritfall, I think was what the name. Like, if I remember that name correctly, it's got to be because that's what it actually is. And another band that I fell in love with that I thought their name was one thing, and then it turned out that it wasn't. It was some band that was releasing their music and then tagging the metadata on their track as that band so that you would download it and think it was some unreleased album or whatever. And so insofar as we'll start to see these Chester Bennington song remakes that are going to come out, we'll know, unless it's being pushed from Linkin Park's channel, if it's like surfacing on Discord or whatever.
People will if a song is really good, people will want to know who produced it. Now, the song might, just like you're saying, the song might blow up because it's mistagged. It's almost like...
Or it'll blow up because it's really good, and even if it's properly tagged and it's just not credited, it's credited to being the band that did it, and the band isn't the one that released it. We'll be able to tell when they're like... straight up, like when they're not pushing it on their channels and it's blowing up on TikTok, we've got this like engagement and conversation that can take place. This discourse can happen in real time now where we're able to sit down and say, oh, that's not real. Like Mike Shinoda is pretty active on TikTok. So like he posted like 3 covers that were like YouTube covers he found that were like, one was a girl in a room with like a nice ambient reverb and she's just pounding on the wall singing Numb. And so she's got like kind of like a beat, like a stomp beat that she's doing. And he shared 3 of them. And he was like, you pick which one you think is the best, just because he's curious about that.
Right.
And like, I mean, I that's a band that I would absolutely fucking kill to do like any work with musically whatsoever. But I mean, I think that that's they're pretty embracing of tech and the way things are going. So I don't think that they would shun it. I think they might be like, we didn't do this, but this is pretty crazily incredible how well you pulled this together.
Yeah.
I just don't know what it's got to be like.
It's difficult because of all the legal implications. And I think bands are right. Like when that happened, with Drake and The Weeknd, I don't think the label made a statement. Nobody made a statement because everyone's afraid to this like grassroots group of people that's doing
didn't
this.
Hurt their Spotify
the biggest,
numbers.
They're the biggest fans. I mean, we don't need to worry about the numbers, but like in terms of like they don't need to, but like in terms of what like, I think that they're trying to learn their lesson from, like Lars Ulrich and trying to like go after the fans
Napster.
for like Napster. We don't want like, cause that just was horrible PR for the recording industry.
Right.
And,
the cat was out of the bag at that point.
They dropped the ball. And like, even if you go back further to like home recording, they thought home recording was going to kill, with this cassette tapes was going to kill the music industry. So they just been on the wrong side of this thing, and streaming also, they were on the wrong side of that. So for every one of these things, they've been on the wrong side
Jelly
of it.
Roll was just on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about how there was a point when he was releasing music at that spin between CD releases and then streaming, and one of his managers was like, "Hey, we got to get your album out, and we got to get it up. They're getting rid of shelf space at Best Buy because they're going to stop selling CDs." And he was like, "Well, then why are we trying to buy up shelf space at Best Buy? It seems to me like that's a business model that's going away, and maybe we should be shifting towards the direction that we're supposed to be going, and or the direction that music is going, which is the streaming realm." So like it's really like we love to try to put the fucking cat back in the bag, but it's like you almost can't. When streaming was a thing, it was like now the best we can do is fight for better wages for the artists for the per stream basis that they get, because pound for pound, I've never listened to any record enough to warrant the amount of streams it would take to give them the $10 I would have spent for the CD back in the day. So there's no equilibrium there yet for artists when it comes to the streaming royalty side.
I think you can still support. I think there are people, and there is a good movement to support people through things like Patreon, through things like people's own merch stores, people like artists' own.
But I want to meet people where they're at. Like the streaming numbers are tens of thousands. Like that's not fair, and we were not. We discuss it from the artist perspective, but Spotify is also by and large not generating a lot of revenue. They often operate at a loss, but they're CEOs are making, significantly large amounts of money.
Also, all the money that they're giving to the main recording, the recording industry, they've got these cuts, these whatever equity or whatever it is in Spotify, where they're getting all this money, and then they're incentivized to promote the artists that are on those labels. So there's a huge amount of space on these editorial playlists that are just reserved for whatever,
for artists for Warner Brothers, artists for Capitol, artists for whatever. Part of me actually kind of low key now. And we're in the age of spin, so like when I look at things like the Drake and Weeknd song that dropped, part of me was almost like, I'm not 100% positive that wasn't intentional and they don't want to claim it just because they want the clout and the build up of all that attention. Like if they're not releasing anything,
it's a conspiracy theory.
right, possibly. But the Weeknd, he's going back to he said he's released like all the music he feels like he can as the Weeknd. He's going back to Able, and that's like what he's going to operate under from now on. So I'm excited to see where he goes from here, because I was a big fan of his on MySpace.
That is interesting, because like there are artists that move on from one phase to the next, but then there's still people that like want them from that previous phase. So that could be like one of those niches that opens up where like, well, now maybe they'll just be AI generated vocalists that want to do songs that sound like The Weeknd from whatever 2015 or whatever. It's like
it's hard because the fans that are diehard enough that want to chase those ghosts are going to do it regardless. So it's like there's no stopping that.
Not like that's the other thing about there's so many people I know, and also like another thing that I do as a habit is I participate in like these online compos, which is like composition competition things that I do, and it's just basically for fun. But it's one of those things where everybody gets together online. Explain what it is first. It's a bunch of people that get together online. We just have a theme and we make a song in a set amount of time. So everybody shows up at, let's say, 9:00 on Thursdays. We do go for an hour. We all make a song, and then we play it all for each other on Discord. And there's like, whoever submits first, it goes in that order, right?
Right.
So, and everybody comments. We all have a good time. And I thought, and when I was doing this, that it would be mostly people who were like producers like me who are like trying to make it or grow a following or make a name for themselves. But to be honest, no, it's just people screwing around. It's just people having fun. There's so many people that make music that actually sounds really good. They have no ambitions of like being a star. They're just making it for fun. They're good at it. I love
that and hate it at the same time. I'm like, you bastard, you just came up with this beautiful thing and you just don't even care about it.
And they're like, there's this one guy that does called DDR Kirby that we know. I think it's him, and he does all these chiptune songs, and they're like, they sound, and he does it in an hour, and they sound exactly like the soundtrack from your favorite like video game that you grew up with on NES. But like, you know, there is a market, of course, for chiptune music on like, there's, you know, I'm sure it's big on Bandcamp and all that, right? But it's like also like, he could be like using those composition skills because they're really good chops to like do film scores or something, probably. Right. But I don't know, maybe he does. But like,
when we did that artist meetup at the Happy Valley Song Lab, there was that the kid who was like, he just lived in his dorm and he like had scored the trailer for the Eternals, the Marvel's Eternals movie that came out, and he did it from his dorm here at Penn State. And I was like, bro, you're here and nobody in this town knew about you, and there's no space for us to get together to kind of meet these people unless we set up these artist meetups.
That's what we should. I mean, that's something I've been really trying to contemplate, is like, I really want to get out more, and like maybe just doing collab, like maybe just networking one-on-one is what I'll have to do for now. But I do wish that there was a place where there was like what we're like the meetup basically like people listening don't know, I ran a meetup for I don't know how many years, like at least 8 years or something like that, in New York City for music producers and basically any musicians who wanted to come. But it was called the New York Electronic Music Producers, and basically that was like so good for me. Like that was just good for my soul. It's really what it is. And like then
iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, when because it was everything from new people to like everybody in between, from like new to old, and like the new people come in, they'd be super passionate, so you sort of have that always coming in, new people, and you get to tell them about what you know, and they can share kind of like what they're usually younger and like super ambitious, and they have all these ideas, and you get to kind of like find out what's going on with that. And then you sort of have the more veteran people who come in who can kind of give you stories and experiences, and
show you chops.
Yeah and it's like, and it's it was always good, and I got connected with so many people, and they just really appreciated what I was doing, and I don't know, it was just like really good for my soul, and I just want something like that here, but I don't have it yet, and I don't know what to do.
Well, I think we need to convince Happy Valley Song Lab to continue doing them and find a place to host them, because I mean, doing that event is how I met you. And having met you has evolved how my own music has progressed, and how I've gotten to expand into doing like top lines for songs for you. And like, I'm really excited that was an opportunity that came about, because I was in the middle of editing a music video. I think I was editing it that night, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's going on tonight." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm just going to keep editing." And then I kind of had like a circle of people.
I know. I had like, it was pretty cool, because I did not have any, I don't think they had any expectations, to be honest. They were
the place was packed.
They were trying not to get their hopes up too high. Right. I think there'll be a few people, and so, yeah, it was packed, so that was good. And obviously we could do that again, but I just don't. I don't know. I want to. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I just don't know. Like,
I don't have the bandwidth to create that thing and sustain it.
It's hard.
But
that's part of it.
And I have to acknowledge that part of my battle in life right now is knowing where and when I actually have the bandwidth to extend outward and do certain things. And I've gotten way more selective with what I do. And so like the few people that I'm constantly interacting with, you're definitely one of them, is like, it is a significantly smaller circle now, but I'm getting significantly more done in that space of time.
That's part of it. That's kind of where my head is at too, where I'm like, I think that was the downside of doing that event, was that because you're meeting so many people, like I said, I met hundreds of people.
That's why there's got to be like one a month, because you can't meet everybody in that first time and really get a full on conversation. But if you can get one person that you kind of link with them.
That's what's different about here versus New York, is like there's churn
amongst
like,
many other things.
So many of the people I became close friends with in New York moved away.
Right.
Some of them.
And this area is very transient in nature.
Yeah,
too.
that's true, but maybe not to the same extent, because you do have people who settled down here for a while and
Right.
people who are here for
And at the very least, you've got them for a year.
years. Yeah, a couple of years. Well, some of them.
Right.
Or unless they're like, graduating, but
that's the goal. I mean, I think like that collaborative process was still facilitated by us being able to all get together and just see who was in our area that was creating and moving and shaking and doing their own thing. One guy was like, oh, I just want to start a band. I don't have any ambition or this, that, and the other thing. I was like, that guy's not for me. Over here, I'm going and talking to this guy over here who's talking about all this EDM shit. And like, you were the one I was excited to meet because Jason and Angel were like, oh, you got to meet this guy that he's been doing all these things. And like, this is what he used to do. And now he just moved here. I'm like, this guy can't be real. Like, how did this skill set doesn't just drop out of the sky and land in this area? And then sure as shit, you did. And I was like, perfect. This is the exact human being I've been looking forward to integrate. Like Mike was really adamant about being like, he's like, I like Venkman more than I like your guys' stuff. And he's like, the stuff you're doing with him, I like better than your original band. And I was like,
we'll definitely like start another track. I think Venkman's probably like done, or at least like done for now.
What?
Until Venkman, I think is like for now. I'm like letting it sit for a minute, and then I'll probably start mixing it like in a few months when I'm ready to start the new record release cycle. But
if I have the final version, I have finally been toggling with having the time to be able to sit down and retrack my vocals in my setting to like.
Yeah, you can definitely retrack whatever you want, like all day. Like you can do it.
I just like give you something like it gives you shit to pick from and choose from. That'll be in my setup. It's more comfortable for like what I'm used to hearing with my setup. So like. There is like something to be said for, and you're obviously going to discover this the more you jump into your own vocal production, but like your monitor mix to avoid like this helps with avoiding click bleed. So like to be able to have it loud and present in my ear and really feel the body of it, I sing more full bodied, more like there's more essence of me in it because I can actually hear myself very well and I'm not worried about click bleed and I'm not singing where I can basically mostly hear myself outside of the headphones anyway. And in doing that, I think I'll get some stronger deliveries for that. But that song is awesome. Like as out of the gate as is, I have no complaints about it. When I hear it, I'm like, I could give him a better vocal take than that or vocal delivery.
Yeah, and we were like writing too. Like I think we did for a writing session because I did a writing session yesterday where I'm just gonna like
scratch these vocals.
I just did a top line on a track. It was actually a Bring Me song because I was like, this is cool. I'll just see if like because like they write in like a lot of the end product is probably going to be like electronic. So I want to like, I've been like going through and trying to find stuff to write over because I've told you before, but like I write over other people's songs sometimes because I just find it easier to like this is the vibe I'm going for. Sometimes I find it really hard to like vocally get a vibe with just from nothing, just from a rough, like, especially if it's just like random, like my demos that I do that are super minimal, like they're just like placeholder instruments. Like it's nothing that you want to sing over.
Right. That's what I'm saying, man. Like if I need to have the bed of what I'm actually going to be singing to underneath me so I can feel where I'm at.
That because I can't like yell and scream and like go hard over something like that's, not matching that level, but in the production process, I love taking a vocal that's really built in and putting under a minimal instrumental and if it stands alone. But it has to be obviously a super well produced vocal to stand alone in that way. But it sounds super cool and it works. Like if I took, if I did a remix of if I do a remix of you guys, I don't have to worry about that because I already have the performance. So I can take this vocal and like do whatever.
Yeah, by the time it's there, I've had time to scratch track it, sit on it for a day or two, and then come back after I've had some time to be more familiar with it to kind of solidify it and give out a take that is like worthy of being printed and then sent to the track.
Yeah. Like I don't know, we're talking about rock before, like rock, EDM, all this mix. And then I was also just thinking about the new, I don't know if you heard the new Millennium record because they did a track. There was that track they did with 7 Lines and Spirit Box. And that was obviously like the one. Shivering.
Yeah. Yep.
And then they also have another track they did with Avril Lavigne and that track just sounds like an Avril Lavigne track to me. Like, so they're going like super like rock pop, like almost indistinguishable. Like how is this even like an electronic act at some point? Because it's so collaborative with like people from rock. So I'm like, this totally makes sense to me. This is exactly what the direction I want to go in as well.
Well, I mean, EDM at large right now is starting to bleed into the rock and metalcore realm in a way that is just like extremely complementary. And I think what we're also seeing is like high level producers from both of those worlds kind of actually meeting and coming together to see how they can kind of do this.
Yeah, there's something different about it. Cause like you think about a couple years ago, they had like Korn and Skrillex, and that was very surface level, like the surface level of like just putting wubs into a Korn song.
Right.
And that's cool, and that is okay. And they did some.
That's how you get there,
together.
though. You just start flirting with it.
But then, like,
first.
I think what is really changed is like people really understand that there's a different philosophy between like modern pop and electronic and rock, and like trying to take the philosophy of pop that is very like kind of dumbed down, I guess is one way to say it, but it's not really that. It's like
it's not like they don't do clever things, but it is templated. But if you think about
like electronic, and I kind of say pop, but I'm like really referring to like specific pop. But you think about like the idea of the drop, the idea of there is a drop. That is the focus of the song. Everything else kind of gets you to that point.
Right.
And you think about like, I like to bring up songs that are in the pop and the rock realm. Like if you think about the song Centuries by Fall Out Boy, because this is like when I was listening to that is an EDM structure because that repetitive line, that is the drop. It's not really a chorus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not exact. It's not the build up to that part is the chorus. And that was exactly when I was remixing songs.
Was that on Save Rock and Roll? I think that was
I don't know.
God Save Rock and Roll, I think was the name of that record.
But there's another one I was using at the time, which was a song. I think it was David Guetta and Nicki Minaj, Hey Mama, and there's a couple or Baby Rexha was on that, and that was another one where it just was like, and Katy Perry Dark Horse also was around the same time. Where
man, that song
it's
slapped.
like, but that's the drop. Listen, it's like it's just the big build up to that one moment.
That's also
the drop.
Fucking Max Martin's special, right? Like he's got the litany of songs.
This is sort of the new philosophy. This is the new way that like electronic has infiltrated pop, is like through the structure, and then now we have metal with like artists like Bring Me the Horizon, like doing that formula with like hard rock and metal, where it's.
I mean, there's always been build-ups, right? There's always been drops to a breakdown, and there's always been the elements that tee you up for EDM that kind of find a way to integrate in a seamless way. I just don't think it's been being played with as much until like I think it's been being played with now more recently than it ever has been. And it's been being played with for, let's be honest, like 20, 30 years.
Right.
But like we're really seeing what it's culminating into. And I think it's the thing that honestly is kind of saving rock and roll right now, because EDM itself, if you're not an EDM fan, because there's no words or there's only words to like, you know, top lines or something like that, it's maybe a little bit more difficult to get into because it's like that's a vibe, right? You got to be in the space for that.
Yeah.
But with rock, if you're in the mood for rock, you don't necessarily dislike a lot of the elements that come from EDM that translate so well to a breakdown, i.e. a drop.
Yeah, there was a whole playlist on Spotify that I found that was like all just recent songs that came out that were either collaborations or like metal, dubstep or metal EDM crossovers that were like, there was a whole playlist and it was all well-known like dubstep and rock artists that were on there. So like this is a huge trend right now.
Yeah.
I've been doing it. I like did a track with this guy Bullet of Reason like years ago. That was like kind of my first one where I was like trying to go at this genre. So I've been in that space for a long time, releasing stuff, not super consistent or anything, but like I've been trying to do like, and all the vocalists that I ever happen to work with are always men. It's like I always found these like like strong, like, you know, like masculine energy, and it works. I've always like tried to find, you know, female vocalists to work with. It's never really worked out for me, but just like that's that energy, that rock energy.
I mean, I definitely know tons of female vocalists. I can help get you some female top liners. And,
yeah, I mean, we should talk about that later, but yeah. Actually, I should. I definitely want that. I want some people to take some stuff I've written and re-sing them and like.
For sure.
That would be.
And then cool. AB the mix. You got the male mix and the female mix. Like fuck it, like release it.
We'll put them together, you know, just like do it.
Yeah.
But
well, dude, like I'm really glad that you took the time to come on the podcast today and talk. I feel like you and I, every time we sit down, I feel like we could talk for hours because like it's hard when we get down to sit somewhere and do work. We like literally spend the first like 45 minutes bullshitting and catching up,
like
and talking about this.
That's what I want to do, yeah.
But dude, I don't dislike it at all, and I'm glad that like I'm super glad you're here. I'm super thankful to have like, you know, met you in my lifetime period, but also to just be, blessed with the opportunity to be able to do some work with you in this truly authentic, like artistic. We're really just kind of plugging away, and I think we're doing all the things in the right way. I kind of hope that this resurgence of EDM into the metalcore and rock world, as it's starting to kind of take off and be a little bit more socially accepted, or even just not just socially accepted, but like popular. I'm hoping that this is kind of like divine timing on our part, that we've been like doing
like
this work
transcend the genres. We want to just bring the sounds that we love together and not worry about if it's the marketers.
I'm not even worried. That's the best part about it, is I was never even worried about the marketing side of it. I was worried about hitting the do I feel this song? And I mean, Spitfire went from a song that I already loved.
EDM, or people going to call it rock.
Right.
At the end of the day, there's like the lines are so blurred because of everything's done in the computer and everything's kind of done in the same way now.
But I'm glad that like we're doing it, and it's coming from such an authentic place. Like, part of what's been so thrilling about the journey of us working together has been that that marketing side of it. We talk a lot about it because we all have our own independent releases we're constantly working on. So it's good to have somebody who's up on the the lingo and the algorithmic data and things that we're coming across that are newsworthy, that we want to discuss with each other to see where that lands with what we're doing in our separate and current setups of releases and whatnot. But from the creation standpoint, man, like I'm really, really, like, I'm so grateful that like we've gotten the opportunity to get together and do some of this work, because it feels like some of the most authentically me and expressive of me music that I've ever done. And that's like, I have a really hard time in any capacity saying that in the first place. So to be able to say it like so like freely and happily is like, that's how I know it's good to me. And when you're the artist, most things are never good to you that come from you. You're like, I got to work really hard to get something good out of there. And this felt like it was not only like seamless because of how we were able to collaborate remotely and together, but like the end result is a song that is a fucking banger. Like, I cannot wait for Spitfire to come out.
Yeah.
And Nate was talking about changing the name. I was like, dude, we can't. I was like, I love the name so much already. It's based off of a plane from World War II that basically changed the tide of the war. And there's a Spitfire documentary on Hulu. If anybody gets a chance to watch it, I highly recommend. There's a lot of like little audio nuggets that I've thought about like taking out of there to end the song with underneath that last little, like, there's kind of like a pinging ring that kind of ends for like 2 or 3 seconds, and just end that with like a nice quote from that, like a short little sting at the end of that would be the fucking cherry on top. Well, dude, we did a ripe, solid 2 hours and some change. 2 hours, 15 minutes flew by.
Yeah.
Pleasure having you on, man.
Right.
Tell people where they can find your stuff, like your artist name, where they can find you on Spotify and everything.
Yeah. So if you got this far, you really enjoy this.
Yeah.
My artist name is Nukage, Nukage. I'm sure it'll be in the show notes, and Nukage.net is my website. You can find links to whatever the latest track I'm working on. You can just search for me on Spotify. Also, you can add me to your playlist. I just released a track called Mesmerize, which is like melodic dubstep with a heavy drop, basically. And I also released 3 other tracks this year you can check out. And we'll be dropping some new tracks with Relic Hearts in very soon. Probably by the time you hear this.
Yeah. If not the week that the episode drops, very soon after. Yeah. I'd like to see it out in June. I would love to see Legends out the same month that we released it last year, just for like, full circle's sake.
Yeah, let's do it.
Hell yeah.
All right.
Dude, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it, Nukage. Right. My boy, Tom Nukage.
Yeah.
Tom Myruski.
We're always collaborating at all times with the universe.
That is a wrap on another episode of the Collab or Die podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making this episode for you. And now it's time for our favorite part of the show, the part where I beg you to please hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you never miss an episode. And don't be shy. Give us a shout out on social media at Collab or Die podcast on all the cool platforms to share your thoughts, your feedback, and your love. Until next time, Collab or Die, baby.